Chapter 1091. At this time, Wan Jinggang suddenly realized that there was still a needle in his body. If this continued, wouldn't his blood be sucked dry? Pull out the needle from his body, then take this bucket of blood out. Don't scare him to death. Then get him to sign his name. Li Zishuan felt that it was funny. Just the sound of water droplets could scare this guy to this extent. He had been in the martial arts world for so many years. That's right, the dripping sound in the room was actually the sound of water droplets. At first, the needle was indeed inserted into Wan Jingang's blood vessels, but after Li Zishuan secretly stuffed a note into Shen Sigi's hand to get a pot of water and a funnel, the dripping sound in the room became the sound of water. The two soldiers guarding Wan Jinggang said that they were helping to watch over Wan Jinggang to prevent him from biting his tongue to commit suicide. But in reality, they were just taking turns to hold the funnel filled with water. The funnel they were using had a large amount of water at the bottom, so the dripping speed was about the same as the dripping speed of blood. This was also the main reason why Li Zishuan asked someone to cover Wan Jingang's eyes. Only then would he be willing to confess. In the middle, there was a situation where the dripping sound stopped. That was because the water was used up, so Li Zishuan had Shen Sigi go out and bring back a pot of wine. Inside the room, they pretended to think that Wan Jingang's blood had dried up, so they let the two soldiers guarding him go up and squeeze out the blood to further impact Wan Jingang's psychological defenses. Under Li Zishuan's direction, the four of them worked together to complete a textbook psychological warfare drama, completely breaking Wan Jingang's psychological defenses. There were no obvious injuries during the whole process, so the Supreme Court wouldn't be able to find any. Holding the confession that Wan Jinggang had signed and signed, Li Zishuan left the room and returned home. As for Wan Jinggang, who was in the house, he was also a little confused. He stared at the little red dot on his arm and muttered, "Huh? Why is there so much blood on my arm? Why is there still blood on my arm? Strange, did Marquis Yong show mercy?" Shen Sigi and the other two soldiers knew the truth of the matter. Hearing this, they tried their best to hold back their laughter and quickly left this temporary prison cell. They were afraid that if they stayed here for too long, they wouldn't be able to hold it in anymore. As for the outside world, it was actually quite lively. The Chui family brought 2 carts of copper coins to donate to the Warm Tang Foundation, causing a huge commotion. Some people praised the kind Chui family for finally coming back, while others mocked the Chui family behind their backs for being forced to donate some money as a face-saving project. But no matter what, the Chui family's reputation among the common people had finally stopped falling. Grandfather, the Marquis of Yong, and stayed in the right Marshal Marquis residence for an entire day and just came out. Dunhua Square, Chui's study. A black-clothed warrior walked in silently and cupped his fists at East County Duke Chui Junchuo. Marquis Tang? You're saying that Li Zishuan stayed in Marquis Tang for an entire day? Chui Junchuo's squinted eyes immediately widened. He stared at the warrior and asked, "It's absolutely true, Grandfather. Right, Marquis Tang? If I'm not wrong, that kid should have gone to interrogate Wan Jinggang, right? With his relationship with Yuqi Jingda, he should be able to move freely in the right Marquis Tang. Wang Shi, this stupid woman, she actually allowed Yuqi Jingda to bring Wan Jinggang away. So stupid." Chui Junchuo's face showed a trace of anger. If he was present yesterday, he would not have allowed things to develop to such a stage. At the very least, he would not have allowed Yuqi Gong to bring a living Wan Jinggang away. Wasn't this giving people something to hold against him? Grandfather is worried that Marquis Yong and will torture Wan Jinggang and get hold of the Chui family's weakness? The black-robed warrior said in a deep voice. Chui Junchuo shook his head and said, "Right, Marquis Tang only has the power to capture people and not the power to interrogate. No matter how good Yuqi Jingda's relationship with Li Zishuan is, he will not agree to torture Wan Jinggang. I'm only worried that after Wan Jinggang is handed over to the Supreme Court in 2 days, he might say something that should not be said. At this critical juncture, if such a situation occurs, the Chui family will most likely be consigned to eternal damnation." The black-robed warrior was silent. Obviously, he knew that the Chui family's disciples had done many dirty things in the dark. Grandfather, Qi Li is willing to make a trip to Marquis Tang tonight to shut Wang Jinggang up. After a long silence in the house, the black-robed warrior cupped his fist and said. A cold light flashed past Chui Junchuo's eyes. Following that, he muttered, Qi Li, your movement technique is outstanding. Logically speaking, sneaking in a Marquis Tang shouldn't be a problem, but just in case, bring Mei Lian along as well. But remember, if there is an ambush in Marquis Tang, retreat immediately. Do you understand? Qi Li obeys. After the black-robed warrior left, Chui Junchuo squinted his eyes. Half leaning on the couch, he pondered for a long time. Suddenly, he opened his mouth. Wang Yong, this old servant is here. The Chui family's old housekeeper walked in from outside the door. It could be seen that Chui Junchuo valued him highly. Otherwise, he would not let him serve by his side. Tomorrow, inform all the retainers in the residence to start writing articles to defame Li Zishuan. No matter if the content is true or not, write it first. Chui Junchuo said in a low voice. He could send people to assassinate Wang Jinggang, but he could not send people to assassinate Li Zishuan. Because if he did that, the Chui family would become the enemy of the entire kingdom. By then, the group of people in the capital would definitely not be able to leave Chang'an City. So, towards Li Zishuan, he could only use the literary method to settle it. The Chui family had been in control of the world for thousands of years. There were hundreds and thousands of scholars who relied on the Chui family. In Chui Junchuo's opinion, if he wanted to defame a person, it would be very easy. He originally planned to carry out this plan in 2 days. However, Li Zishuan's actions today made him feel a sense of crisis. So, he had to bring forward the plan. Tai Gong, this old servant has something to say. Wang Yong hesitated for a moment before he said, Speak. The old housekeeper cupped his hands and said slowly, Recently, the people have been spurning the Chui family. The public opinion is fierce. Many retainers in the residence have thought of leaving the Chui family. Tai Gong, what do you think we should do? Chui Junchuo's face was frosty. He snorted coldly. Humph, a group of ingrates. The Chui family has raised them for so many years. How can they leave just because they want to? Tell them that if they leave the Chui family, this old man will not let them have the chance to stand out in this lifetime. Aristocratic families were merciless. They were even more merciless to those who betrayed them. At this moment, Chui Junchuo finally tore off his hypocritical mask in front of the world, revealing the ferocious fangs under the mask. Yes, Tai Gong. Chapter 1092. I didn't expect Xiao Xian to be so talented in interrogating criminals. I'm really curious now. Is there anything in this world that can stump him? Yuqi Manor. Yuqi Jingda listened to his subordinate's report on Wuhou Manor's situation during the day. He stroked his beard and laughed. In the morning, after Yuqi Jingda finished his morning court, he went straight home. He didn't go to Wuhou Manor in the afternoon because he wanted to give Li Zishuan enough time to interrogate Wang Jinggang. On the matter of Pang Feiji concealing information, Yuqi Jingda knew that Li Zishuan would have a knot in his heart. He wanted to give Li Zishuan some time to resolve the knot in his heart. So even though he knew that Li Zishuan was in the right Wuhou Manor today, he didn't show his face. I thought that Marquis was really going to drain Wang Jingang's blood. I didn't expect Marquis to use such a brilliant method. This subordinate prostrates himself in admiration. Shinshigi couldn't help but sigh. This is why Xiao Xian can become a marquis at such a young age, while you, Shunyi, are still a small Siggy at your age. Yuqi Jingda had just learned a new interrogation method and was in a good mood. He made a small joke with his subordinate. That is Marquis Yong, and is the literary and martial star of the heavens. How can I compare? But this move of Marquis, I've learned it. In the future, when I meet a disobedient criminal, I'll scare him like this. Anyway, the people from the Supreme Court won't be able to find any flaws. Shinyi scratched his head and chuckled. Yuqi Jingda smiled and didn't care much. He walked 2 steps with his hands behind his back and suddenly said in a serious tone, "Shun Siggy, listen to my order." Shunyi quivered and quickly cupped his fist. "I'm here," Yuchi Jingda said expressionlessly. "Inform General Song. Order all the soldiers of the right Wuhong Manor to be on high alert tonight. They must be loose on the outside and tight on the inside. Also, prepare 300 archers for an ambush, in case experts attack at night." Shunyi was shocked. Even though he was full of questions, this wasn't the time to ask. He quickly said, "I've received your order. Go." Yuchi Jingda waved his hand, and Shunyi accepted the order and left. He had a faint intuition in his heart that this night would absolutely not be peaceful. "Cui Junchuo, I hope you won't disappoint me." Yuchi Jingda raised his head to look out the window and muttered, "Lisa Xuan, did you manage to interrogate him at the right Martial Marquis mansion today?" It wasn't just Cui Junchuo and Yuchi Jingda who were paying attention to Lisa Xuan's movements. Lier was also paying attention at all times. The main thing was that he was afraid that Lisa Xuan didn't know the severity of the situation and really completely fell out with the Cui family. Imperial Palace, Suite du Hall. After Lier finished his dinner, he came here to work overtime. Zhao Song came over and told Lier about Lisa Xuan's movements that night. Lier frowned and asked. Zhao Song bowed and said, "Your Majesty, this old servant does not know." According to the information, there were a total of 3 soldiers who accompanied the Marquis Yong and for interrogation. After the interrogation, they left the Martial Marquis mansion and returned home. Lier frowned, and after a moment, he ordered, "Tomorrow, bring one of the soldiers present into the palace. After the morning assembly, I want to see him." This old servant obeys. "Marquis, this subordinate has already sent the letter to General Dugu. Yong Lilane, Li Mansion West Courtyard." In the study, Pang Feiji cupped his fist towards Lisa Xuan. "What did Dugu Xian say?" Lisa Xuan asked. Pang Feiji cupped his fist and said, "General Dugu said that he and Fei Ying will arrive at the place that Marquis mentioned on time." During the day, Lisa Xuan heard that the old master of the Cui family had sent someone to donate money to the Warm Tang Foundation. After he left the right Martial Marquis mansion, he felt that something was wrong. He estimated that with the Cui family's power, they would definitely know that he had stayed in the right Martial Marquis mansion for an entire day. As for the purpose of him coming to the right Martial Marquis mansion, Cui Junchuo, that old fox, would definitely be able to guess it even with his eyes closed. Following this train of thought, the Cui family might have some ideas about Wan Jinggang tonight. Hence, he asked the Dugu brothers to hide in the surroundings of the Martial Marquis mansion tonight and help capture the assassins sent by the Cui family. He had also thought of asking the expert curly-beard guest to come over, but he felt that it was a waste of talent. No matter how deep the Cui family's background was, it would be difficult for them to send out an assassin of curly-beard guest level. Hence, after thinking about it, Lisa Xuan decided to leave the assassins that might appear tonight for the Dugu brothers to practice on. One of them was a martial arts master, while the other was a flying dagger master. He believed that as long as it was not an assassin above the middle stage of a martial arts master, the 2 brothers would definitely be able to handle it. "And that's good. How's the workshop?" "According to your instructions, Marquis, the editorial staff of the Tang Daily will all stay in the workshop to print all night. We expect to finish printing around midnight. Is the city gate ready?" Reporting to Marquis, Fei Ying said that he could help Marquis arrange it. At that time, as long as no one wanted to enter the city, it wouldn't be a big problem. They could use some hanging baskets to transport things into the city. "All right, you may leave. This subordinate will take his leave." After Pang Feiji left, Lisa Xuan looked out of the window and said coldly, "Tonight, the show is about to start." The night was dark and the wind was strong. Most people in Chang had already fallen asleep, except for the playboys in P Square. Swish, swish. 2 black shadows dashed out from Dunhua Square. They ran along the roofs of rows of houses, avoiding the patrolling Wu Ho mansion while dashing towards the right Marquis mansion. Leaping onto roofs and vaulting over walls. These 2 people had performed these 4 words to the extreme. 6 minutes later, On a roof opposite the Wuho mansion, there were two black, clothed men. One of the shorter black, clothed men glanced at the situation in the Wuho mansion and said softly, "Big brother, with just these few Wuho mansion, with our skills, it would be easy to sneak in without anyone noticing. Isn't Tai Gong being too cautious? It's obvious that any one of us can do it. Why must he send us all at once?" His words were filled with contempt for the enemy and confidence in himself. The other man frowned and reprimanded, "Second brother, don't let your guard down. This is Chang'an City. If we are not careful, we will be wanted by the entire city. In a while, you will be in charge of keeping watch outside. At the crucial moment, you can make some movements and help me attract the attention of these Wuho mansion. I will go in and take care of Wan Jinggang. I will be out soon." This black-clothed man was Qili. The other one should be Mei Lian. "Big brother, why don't I go? Anyway, these Wuho mansion can't do anything to me." Chapter 1093. Mei Lian, who was rubbing his palms together, did not realize the danger lurking in the darkness. He did not take Qi Li's warning to heart at all. Instead, he eagerly volunteered, "No, second brother, if you meet an expert with your movement technique, you might be in trouble. It's better for me to go." Qi Li shook his head and flatly refused. "Big brother, it's so late at night. How can there be an expert? Besides, even if there's an expert, isn't there still you? Big brother, are you going to abandon me?" Mei Lian did not give up and continued to persuade him. "That's fine. Second brother, if you find something wrong, retreat immediately. Safety first." Unable to resist Mei Lian's pestering, Qi Li thought for a moment and agreed. "Hey, got it, big brother." Mei Lian excitedly replied and then jumped down from the roof. In the night, he jumped left and right, dodging a few groups of Wuho government patrolling the night. Suddenly, a sense of pride rose in his heart. "Hey, seems like grandfather and big brother are overthinking. It's almost midnight. How can there be an expert?" After knocking out a few Wuho guards without anyone noticing, Mei Lian could not help but mutter softly. At this time, he was less than 20 feet away from the small house where Wan Jinggang was locked up. Wan Jinggang, you're usually so arrogant. Today I'm here to send you on your way." Mei Lian volunteered. Other than being bored and wanting to show off his skills, another important reason was that he and Wan Jinggang had a grudge. Once, when he was doing something good with a servant girl in the Chui family, Wan Jinggang bumped into them and even told Chui Junchuo. Although Chui Junchuo did not punish him and even gave the servant girl to him, this kind of experience of being stabbed in the dark would make anyone unhappy. Bang bang. Outside the room where Wan Jinggang was locked up, there were also two martial marquis guarding it. Mei Lian flashed, and before the two martial marquis could see who it was, they were knocked unconscious by Mei Lian. Creak, the door opened. "Who is it?" Wan Jinggang, who was hanging from the beam in the room, suddenly opened his eyes and asked aloud, "Hee, guess who I am?" Mei Lian let out a sinister laugh, which was particularly eerie in the dark night. "Mei Lian, it's you? Did grandfather send you to save me?" Wan Jinggang was overjoyed. Clang! Mei Lian suddenly pulled out the dagger from her thigh and sneered. "Ha! In your dreams, brat. Grandfather sent me here to shut you up forever." Wan Jinggang was furious and said in disbelief, "Bullshit. Mei Lian, you faked Tai Gong's orders. When I get out of here, I will definitely complain to my grandfather." Tisk. Mei Lian was even more furious. He sneered and said, "Complain, complain. Wan Jinggang, since you like to complain so much, go complain to the King of Hell." As soon as he finished speaking, he dashed towards Wan Jingang's throat with the dagger in his hand. Swish, swish. In the blink of an eye, just as Mei Lian's dagger was about to touch Wan Jingang's throat, he suddenly heard the sound of something tearing through the air behind him. His many years of combat experience told him that someone was shooting at him from behind. If he insisted on killing Wan Jinggang now, he would definitely be hit by 2 arrows. How could he do something that would hurt both sides? "You have a death wish." Mei Lian roared angrily. He quickly turned around and waved his dagger. With 2 clanging sounds, the arrows were pushed to the side by him. Taking advantage of this gap, he realized that there were two martial marquis standing outside the door with bows in their hands. Oomph. You overestimate yourself. Mei Lian's journey tonight had been smooth sailing. Even now, he looked down on all the martial marquises here. When he saw that someone was shooting at him, his first reaction was not to run, but to take the initiative to attack. He wanted to kill the person who shot him to vent his anger. His figure changed, and he rushed out of the room in an instant. Then, he went straight for the two soldiers who were holding the big bows. Swish, swish, swish. However, the moment he dashed out of the room, dozens of soldiers suddenly appeared from under the tables, cabinets, and bookshelves leaning against the wall. Dozens of arrows were shot at him at the same time. It's an ambush. No matter how dumb Mei Lian was, he knew that he had fallen into an ambush. He was shocked and ran out of the door without thinking. Despicable. Shameless. I'll kill all of you the next time I come. Mei Lian was too fast, even faster than the arrows. In the blink of an eye, he had knocked away a few soldiers and dashed out of the door. As he left, he did not forget to leave a threat. Fire. A general brought 300 archers and rushed to the outside of Wuhou government. The general pointed at the direction where Mei Lian had fled and shouted, "Swish, swish, swish." With 300 people shooting at the same time, no matter how fast Mei Lian was, it was difficult for him to dodge all the arrows. Clang. Second brother, be careful. Just at this moment, Qili, who had been lying on the roof opposite Wuhou government, upon seeing this, immediately pulled out her sword, and in a flash, she flew over. Her speed was more than 30% faster than Mei Lian. Ding, ding, pang, pang. In the blink of an eye, Qili was beside Mei Lian. He danced with his sword, and after a series of ding, ding, pung, pung sounds, all the arrows fell to the ground, and the brothers were unharmed. General Song, there are two assassins. When the Wu Marquis saw that there was an extra person on the battlefield, they quickly said in fear, "Fire! All of you fire for me. Those who hit will be heavily rewarded." The general, surnamed Song, roared, "Second brother, let's go." Qi Li and Mei Lian retreated as they fought. In a short period of time, no one could do anything to them. The main reason was that their martial arts were too powerful. Oomph. Want to leave? Not so easy. 9 swords beyond the swords. Broken sword style. Even the archers could not do anything to these two experts. Seeing that they were about to fly away, General Song was anxious. At this moment, in the dark night sky, there was an extremely clear sound of a sword. Then, a young man with a sword in his hand was heading straight for Qi Li. So fast, so powerful. This was also a master expert. General Song was overjoyed, but Qi Li was shocked because he realized that when facing this sword, it was as if his hands and feet were tied, and there was nowhere for him to hide. Although the other party was also a master expert, his strength could completely suppress him. This made him realize that Wu Marquis government had already set up an inescapable trap, waiting for them to come in. Qi Li had no choice but to fight with his sword. "Big brother, let me help you." Mei Lian also pulled out his long saber, wanting to help his good brother, but who knew that 2 flying daggers would whiz towards his face. "Ha! Where are you going? Your opponent is me." Chapter 1094. It's General Dugu. General Zhou, who was on night duty in the Right Marquis mansion, also recognized the 2 brothers from the Dugu family. He exclaimed and quickly said, "Soldiers, listen to my order. Set up the formation and surround the enemy. Tonight, no one is allowed to leave." "Yes, sir." Nearly 1,000 soldiers of the Right Marquis mansion answered loudly and quickly got into formation. The infantrymen held swords on the inside, while the archers held swords on the outside. The military formation quickly pressed down on the 2 black-clothed assassins. "Second brother, don't fight. Leave if you can. Otherwise, none of us will be able to leave tonight." Qili did not expect the Right Marquis mansion to be surrounded by nearly 1,000 marquises and the 2 Dugu brothers. These 2 had become famous after fighting Li Zixuan at Snake Spirit Mountain. The 3 of them were actually able to fight Yin Batian, who was at the peak of the Grandmaster realm. Now that Dugu Xian had already entered the Grandmaster realm, and Dugu Fang's flying dagger skill, which could threaten a martial Dao Grandmaster, must have improved as well. Under such circumstances, Qi Li almost did not want to fight. That was what he thought, and that was what he did. He shouted at Mei Lian as he dashed left and right. He wanted to escape before the Marquis Mansion's soldiers completely surrounded him. He did not want to fight Dugu Xian head-on. His body movements were very strange. He was like a shadow, drifting in and out of the crowd, but he could always find the best path and the best time to quickly pass through the gaps between people. It was like a scene of 100 flowers passing through, but not a single leaf touching the body. The lethality of Dugu Xian's swordsmanship was quite high, but it was difficult to use in the crowd. In such a restricted state, he could not target Qi Li with his swordsmanship. In the blink of an eye, Qi Li was about to escape the encirclement of the right Martial Marquis soldiers. Seeing that Qi Li was about to leave, the soldiers of the right Marquis Mansion quickly released arrows under the command of their general. For a moment, arrows rained down, but it was difficult to hit Qi Li's body. What a strange movement. Seeing this, Dugu Xian was surprised. Immediately, he decided not to pursue Qi Li and turned to join forces with Dugu Feng to encircle the other assassin who was weaker in martial arts. Mei Lian, who was already no match for Dugu Feng, felt even more pressure. Not long after, her body was cut a few times. "Big brother, leave quickly. Leave me alone." Mei Lian saw that the Wuhou army had also turned around and surrounded him. Furthermore, he still had 2 experts by his side attacking him with all their might. He knew that he had no hope of breaking out of the encirclement. Who asked his movement technique to be inferior to his big brother's? Thus, he roared at the night sky. Whoosh! In the dark night, a roar of unwillingness and anger could be heard. "Second brother, big brother will bring our brothers to save you." It sounded like Qi Li's voice. After that, there was no more sound in the darkness. "Hey, you see, your companions have all run away. I think you should just surrender. Maybe I'm in a good mood and won't kill you." Dugu Feng glanced at the direction where Qi Li's voice came from, and then smiled at Mei Lian. Although Mei Lian had already touched the threshold of Grandmaster realm, and his actual strength was slightly higher than normal martial Dao Grandmasters, Dugu Feng was a man who had just surpassed Grandmaster Pinnacle in a head-on battle. He could completely suppress Mei Lian. Not to mention that his big brother, Dugu Xian, had also come to help him. Surrender without a fight? Dream on. Even if I die, I'll drag someone down with me. 7 arrows. Mei Lian laughed coldly. Then he swung his sleeves, and 7 short arrows with a cold glint could be seen flying toward Dugu Feng from 7 different directions. Obviously, Dugu Feng was the scapegoat he was talking about. Who asked this guy to have such a big mouth? F***CK. You think I'm easy to bully, don't you? You didn't shoot my big brother, but you shot me? Dugu Feng was hopping mad. Previously, when they were fighting Enbatian at Snake Spirit Mountain, Enbatian had used him as a breakthrough point and attacked him with all his might. Now that Mei Lian, a weakling who was weaker than him, had used him as a breakthrough point, how could he tolerate this? "Feng, be careful. There's poison on the arrows." Dugu Xian roared, wanting to save Dugu Feng, but it was obviously too late. 7 arrows were flying in 7 different directions, taking into account Dugu Feng's possible escape routes. If it was an ordinary person, they would definitely be dead. But Dugu Feng was not someone who could be judged by common sense. The more dangerous the situation, the more his potential would be stimulated. As he controlled his body to retreat quickly, he pulled out 7 Xian Leaf flying daggers from his thigh belt at lightning speed and sent them toward the 7 arrows. It could be said that it was done in one smooth motion. During this process, others could not even see the trajectory of his palm. Half a year ago, when he was fighting Enbatian, he could only use 3 Xian Leaf flying daggers at the same time. Although strictly speaking, there was still some time between these 7 daggers. To be able to do this was enough to show that Dugu Feng's current strength was many times stronger than before. Ding, ding, ding. 7 crisp sounds were heard, and all 7 arrows were hit by Dugu Fei's Xian Li flying daggers. Seeing this, Dugu Xen heaved a sigh of relief and used the lonely wind sword to slash at Mei Lian with all his might. Mei Lian was only good at hidden weapons and assassination. How could she be a match for a martial Dao master like Dugu Xen? In less than 3 rounds, she had already been stabbed. Dugu Xen saw a loophole in Mei Lian's defense and changed his move instantly. His longsword was finally less than an inch away from Mei Lian's throat. Put down your weapons and surrender. The noisy right martial marquis household's entrance quieted down instantly, leaving only Dugu Xen's cold voice. Guards, tie up the assassin. Martial Marquis Household's General Zhou waved his hand and ordered. Tie me up. Dream on. Mei Lian, the wild beast that everyone thought was trapped in a cage, laughed evilly and then charged at Dugu Xen's longsword without hesitation. Shing! That was the sound of a sharp sword piercing into flesh. Things happened too suddenly, and it was also too unexpected. Dugu Xen did not even have time to retract his sword before Mei Lian killed himself in front of everyone. Doctor, call the doctor. General Zhou was shocked and quickly went to check on the situation before shouting loudly. It's too late. He's not breathing anymore. Dugu Xen said coldly as he placed his finger on Mei Lian's nose to check. There was even a hint of frustration in his tone. I didn't expect this kid to be so decisive. How ruthless. Dugu Fei muttered in surprise. Chapter 1095. Young Master, there's movement at the right martial manor. At midnight, Li Zixuan had already let Han Yushi sleep while he was reading in the study room. Outside the room, Pang Fei Ji's low and hurried voice sounded. Come in. Li Zixuan's eyes flashed and immediately said, Creak. Pang Fei Ji walked in quietly. The Chui family sent experts to the martial manor. Li Zixuan hurriedly asked. Pang Fei Ji cupped his fists and replied, Marquis's prediction is godly. Just 3 minutes ago, an expert infiltrated the martial manor and was discovered by the martial manor on duty. However, that person's martial arts were exceptionally high. Even though General Yuchi had placed 300 archers in ambush in the Wuhou government, they were unable to harm him in the slightest. Thus, the 2 Dugu generals who were guarding outside hurriedly joined the battle. Only then was the situation reversed. It must be said that he used to mingle in the right martial manner. If not, for him to wander around the streets in the middle of the night, it would be strange if he wasn't captured by the patrolling martial manor. How was the battle situation? Did you manage to capture the assassin? Li Zixuan expressionlessly asked. Marquis, after the assassin who had infiltrated the Wuhou government was surrounded, everyone then realized that there was another assassin outside who was secretly providing support, but the assassin's movement technique was too brilliant. General Dugu was unable to catch up and let him escape. Although the remaining one's martial arts were not bad, he was not General Dugu's opponent. After he was defeated by General Dugu, everyone thought that he would surrender. But who would have thought that he would directly crash into General Dugu's sword and commit suicide? Committed suicide? Li Zixuan frowned and secretly cursed his bad luck. He had painstakingly set up a trap. In the end, one escaped, and the one left behind was a corpse. This was really fate making fools of people. Pung pung. Suddenly at this time, there was a series of knocks on the door. In the middle of the night, it would definitely not be someone from the Li Manor knocking on the door. It could only be someone from outside the manor. Li Zixuan gave Pang Fei Ji a look. Pang Fei Ji approached the door and carefully opened a crack. When he saw the person outside, he immediately opened the door completely. It's Xen. Seeing that it was Dugu Xen, Li Zixuan stood up in shock. Little Xian, you should know about tonight's matter, right? Dugu Xen nodded and walked forward. And I know. Fei Ji has already told me about it. Xen, sit down and rest first. Li Zixuan smiled. Dugu Xen said, Little Xian, I'm sorry. We Xian did not want Xian's alive. Even if we suspect that the Chui family sent them, We have no proof. Li Zixuan wanted a deal with a 1,000-year-old family, like the Chui family. The Duga family had no objections. One of them represented the nobles of Shandong, while the other represented the old aristocratic families. Moreover, since the Sui and Tang dynasties, the Dugu family's glory had always been closely related to the emperor of that time. It could be said that they were the unwavering royalists. In addition, Dugu Xin and Dugu Feiying had always been on good terms with Li Zixuan. When they heard that Li Zixuan wanted them to help, they agreed without hesitation. It's fine, it's fine. No one expected that the assassin would suddenly commit suicide. It's not your fault. Moreover, it doesn't matter if we can capture them alive. As long as Wan Jinggang is still alive, it's fine. Li Zixuan smiled and comforted them. Although he said that to comfort them, it was actually the truth. Even if there were no assassins tonight, he would still make a move against the Chui family. But I think I know a little about the identities of these two assassins. Dugu Xin shook his head and said hesitantly, "Oh, just where did they come from?" Li Zixuan was also very curious about what kind of assassins they were. They could actually beat Dugu Xin in terms of movement techniques. Dugu Xin frowned and said, "The leader should be Qi Li. He has 3 brothers, Qi Li, Mei Yin, Wang Liang, and Swan and I. Because more than 10 years ago, the 4 of them killed and robbed people in the Taibai mountain area and took over the mountain as kings. They were called the Taibai 4 Ghosts. But after the world was peaceful, no one knew where they went. Qi Li, Mei Yin, Wang Liang, and Swan and I. Together, they became Qi Mei, Wang Liang, and Swan and I. Calling them the Taibai 4 Ghosts is just right." After Li Zixuan heard this, he muttered to himself. Then he asked, "Xin, how do you know that they're the Taibai 4 Ghosts?" Dugu Xin recalled, the leader of the assassins, his movement technique was like a shadow. He could always determine the most suitable place to land in the shortest time. At that time, there were thousands of martial marquis around. Not only did they not obstruct him, they became a barrier to help him escape. This movement technique is very similar to the 5 elements ghost steps that I heard from my second uncle. And this 5 elements ghost steps is the unique movement technique of the Taibai 4 Ghosts. Qi Li. Li Zixuan blinked and said in amazement, "There is such a magical movement technique in this world. After we destroy the Chui family, we must capture this Qi Li and interrogate him." Dugu Xin was speechless. What did he mean by, "after we destroy the Chui family"? He spoke as if he was drinking soup. Was the Chui family something that could be destroyed so easily? Although he believed that Li Zixuan would not be at a disadvantage against the Chui family, he would never believe that Li Zixuan could destroy the Chui family. Grandfather, something bad has happened. The Chui family. It was already midnight. At this time, everyone in the Chui family was asleep. However, an old man rushed to the east courtyard and shouted as he approached the room. There was a rustling sound of clothes being put on in the room. Then, the lights were turned on. "Come in and talk." Then, Chui Junchuo's voice came from the room. The old housekeeper quickly went in and bowed to Chui Junchuo. Grandfather, Qi Li and Mei Lian failed in their mission. There were many soldiers in the right marquee mansion in advance, and the 2 juniors of the Dugu family were also there. Chui Junchuo's expression changed. He coughed twice and said in a trembling voice, "Were Qi Li and Mei Lian caught?" The old housekeeper said bitterly, "Grandfather, Qi Li's movement technique is outstanding. Dugu Xin could not catch up with him, so he escaped. But Mei Lian did not escape, and her whereabouts are unknown." Whereabouts are unknown. Chui Junchuo's usually expressionless face finally showed some panic. It's over. If Mei Lian falls into the hands of the imperial court, the Chui family will be doomed. We have to make other plans. Otherwise, we won't even be able to leave Chang'an City in 2 days. The old housekeeper opened his mouth and wanted to say something to comfort him, but he realized that he could not do anything in the end. Continue to pay attention to Mei Lian's whereabouts. If there is any news, inform me immediately. Also, where's Qi Li? Ask him to come and see me. Chui Junchuo said after a long time, but his voice seemed to have aged a lot. Chapter 1096. Reporting to Taigong, Chili was worried that Wuho government would track him down, so he sent someone to send the news back, while he went to hide somewhere else. Chui residence, East Courtyard Wing. The old butler bowed and replied, That's good too. Chui Junchuo stroked his beard and nodded. Then he looked at the old butler and said, Wang Yong, quickly pack up. Once there's any movement, we'll leave Chong immediately and return to Zhengzhou. That's where our Chui family's roots are. Taigong, those articles that you asked the guests to write, do you still want to continue tomorrow? The old butler suddenly remembered what Chui Junchuo told him a few hours ago, so he asked again, Forget it. Let's wait first. Although Wuho government might not have caught Mei Lian, but if Wan Jinggang knew that Qi Li and Mei Lian went to Wuho government to assassinate him, he would definitely betray the Chui family. I have to plan early. You can leave first. Yes. Taigong, you should rest early. The old butler looked at Chui Junchuo worriedly and left. Li Zishuan, Ali Zishuan, I've really underestimated you. In the house, Chui Junchuo could not help but sigh. When he had just returned to Chong, and this morning, he was still scolding the Wang family for making so many bad moves, causing the Chui family to fall into an extremely passive situation. But now, he found that he seemed to have made a bad move as well, and the Chui family's current situation was only one step away from despair. This made him regret sending Qi Li to assassinate Wan Jinggang, and at the same time, he started to face Li Zishuan as an opponent. At such a young age, he was outstanding in both civil and martial arts. Although his scheming was not mature, but he was always able to predict the enemy's moves at the most crucial moment. Such a young man. Even Chui Junchuo, who had lived his whole life, felt a little apprehensive. This kid is definitely a big enemy of the aristocratic families. If the 5 families and 7 hopes do not unite to get rid of this kid, there will be a disaster in the future. In the silent night, Chui Junchuo sighed. This night was very short for ordinary people. It was nothing more than lying in bed and dreaming. However, for people like Chui Junchuo, Li Zishuan, and Pang Feiji, this night was very long. The long Chui Junchuo couldn't sleep because he was worried. The long Pang Feiji couldn't sleep because he was excited. The long Li Zishuan couldn't sleep because he needed to be in command and strategize. Bang bang. Marquis, your subordinate has something important to report. At midnight, Pang Feiji knocked on the door of Li Zishuan's study room. There was a hint of urgency and excitement in his voice. Come in. Pang Feiji pushed the door open and entered. Marquis, the things that you asked for have all been printed. General Fei Ying informed the city gate officer and used more than a dozen hanging baskets to move them into the city. It's in the courtyard now. Li Zishuan was shocked. He turned around and said, Okay, follow the plan immediately. Pang Feiji was stunned. He pointed at himself and asked, Marquis, you want your subordinate to go up? Li Zishuan kicked him in annoyance and said, Nonsense. If you don't go up, do you want me to go up? It's not like you don't know how to use it. Go quickly. Okay. Your subordinate will go right away. Pang Feiji laughed and covered his butt as he went out. It was obvious that he was very happy. Half an hour later. Marquis, if your subordinate can't get down later, what should I do? Li Residence, West Courtyard. Pang Feiji was about to take off in the basket of the hot air balloon. However, at this moment, he suddenly felt a little scared. After all, the ancient people were very respectful of the sky, and he was about to fly. While he was excited, he couldn't help but feel nervous. Cut the king crap. How can you not get down? Won't you come down when the kerosene on the lamp runs out? Li Zishuan stepped forward and kicked Pang Feiji's butt again. Pang Feiji almost cried when he heard this. Marquis, if the kerosene runs out, won't your subordinate fall from the sky and die? Although he was stupid, he wasn't stupid. He could still understand this kind of thing. Li Zishuan said impatiently, Enough. Stop talking nonsense. Go quickly. You have to know that what you're doing tonight might be something that will go down in history. When the Chui family is destroyed, you'll definitely have a part to play. This was a very tempting picture. Pang Feiji's breathing quickened when he heard this. He was just an insignificant bodyguard, but now he was going to participate in such a great undertaking of destroying the Chui family. He might even be able to leave his name in history. It was hard not to be excited. Okay, Marquis, watch carefully. Your subordinate will definitely make it snow in Chang tonight. Hee hee. Pang Feiji laughed heroically. Then, he started the fire and untied the rope. His movements were smooth, and it was obvious that he had practiced before. After a while, the hot air balloon carrying Pang Feiji slowly left the ground. The rest of the bodyguards in the courtyard looked at Pang Feiji enviously. Their eyes were also filled with anticipation because they were going to fly up in a while. Snow? Wouldn't it be more fitting to call it heavenly maidens scattering flowers? Looking at Pang Feiji, who was gradually ascending, Li Zixuan's lips curled into a smile as he muttered to himself. According to the plan, Li Zixuan would hand over the confession signed by Wan Jinggang to the workshop. The workshop would work overtime to make hundreds of thousands of copies and send them to Chang'an. Then Pang Feiji would bring the hundreds of thousands of copies up into the sky. Then he would scatter the confession to all the people in Chang'an. When the people woke up in the morning, they would be surprised. As for why he didn't go up and ask Pang Feiji to go up, it was because he was tired. A piece of paper was about 0.01 millimeters thick. 100,000 pieces of paper piled up together would be 10 meters. A few 100,000 pieces of paper would be tens of meters. It would probably weigh a few tons. It wouldn't be easy to scatter the confession all over the city. The hot air balloon would have to make more than 10 trips up and down. Of course, Pang Feiji wouldn't be able to handle such a huge workload alone. Tonight, almost all of Li Zixuan's bodyguards would have to take turns going up. Walala, Pang Feiji, who was floating in the sky, immediately began to scatter the flowers. Luckily, the wind wasn't strong that night. At this time, almost all the people were asleep. Otherwise, if people saw him scatter the papers in the sky, they would think that he was crazy or was in the middle of a funeral. The hot air balloon today, after Li Zixuan's improvements, was equipped with flapping wings in all 4 directions. It could now turn around, front, back, left, and right. It didn't need to be like before, where it needed to be laboriously punched in the opposite direction. Therefore, Pang Feiji could control the direction and scatter the papers at the same time. It was quite easy for him. F***CK. This bastard. Doesn't he know how to throw it further away? Throw it all back to me. Li Zixuan took down the confession that was covering his forehead and complained with a little annoyance. Chapter 1097. Extorting a confession, rubbing, setting up an ambush, scattering flowers. Too many things had happened on this day. Li Zixuan had basically filled the entire day to the brim. Even his sleeping time had been arranged by him. It looked like he was racing against time. That's right. He was indeed racing against time. The Chui family had a rich heritage and many capable people. In terms of manpower, material resources, and financial resources, Li Zixuan was no match for the Chui family. If he couldn't destroy the Chui family in the shortest time possible and turn to a war of attrition, Li Zixuan would only be on the path of failure. In addition, as the ruler of a country, Li Er had many spies under him. It wouldn't take long for him to know that Li Zixuan had interrogated Wan Jinggang in the right Marquis household. When that time came, Old Li would definitely come over to stop Li Zixuan's plan against the Chui family. Therefore, no matter what the reason was, Li Zixuan had to start this plan in the shortest time possible. Husband, you haven't slept yet. Li Zixuan instructed his personal guards to look for him immediately if there was an emergency. Then, he returned to his room. Perhaps the sound of the door opening woke Han Yushi from her sleep. She rubbed her eyes and looked at Li Zixuan with sleepy eyes. Did I wake you up? Li Zixuan stroked his wife's smooth hair and said apologetically, No, husband, it has nothing to do with you. Han Yushi quickly said, Husband, are you done with your work now? Lisa Schwan smiled knowingly and said, "I'm done. I'll sleep now. There's a good show tomorrow." Lisa Schwan had told Han Yushi about the plan to deal with the Chui family. So, Han Yushi understood what Lisa Schwan meant by a good show. She said with anticipation, "After tomorrow, the people will see the Chui family under the mask. Good and evil will be repaid. The Chui family should pay for what they have done all these years." Not only did Han Yushi know about the plan to deal with the Chui family, but she also saw Wang Jingang's confession. So, she didn't have a good impression of the Chui family. As kind as she was, she also hoped that the evil people of the Chui family would receive their retribution. Wife, let's sleep early." Lisa Schwan took off his coat, got into the bed, and hugged his wife. Very quickly, the two people in the bedroom fell into a deep sleep. Outside, Pang Feiji, the poor child who was handing out flyers in the sky, was still enjoying the cool breeze. The next day, the sun, the sky Chong, the sky, the sky, the sun, the sky. For the hard-working commoners, a new day of life had already begun. "Mother, is it? What are you? Of? It was fine yesterday. How could it possibly snow today? Mother, quick look. It's white outside, just like snow." In a residential area in Chang'an City, a little boy woke up early and found a lot of white paper in the yard. He shouted excitedly into the house and then rushed to the white paper in the yard. The father of the child. "Come and see. There's a lot of paper in the yard. I don't know where it came from last night." A woman came out to take a look and exclaimed. Soon, a man in his 30s came out of the house. "Father, mother, there are words on the paper. Also, I recognize the 3 words on it. Read confession book." The little boy looked at the content on the paper and read it out loud proudly. A child at such a young age could read. It could be seen that this family was an intellectual family. Confession? Father, why do we have a confession? The woman was puzzled. "Yulin, show father the paper." The man's expression changed. He quickly walked to the boy and took a piece of paper from the boy's hand. He began to read it seriously. Gradually, his face was filled with anger. But then, a trace of fear appeared on his face. "Father, what's written on it?" The woman saw the man's expression change several times and could not help but ask. "Mother, quickly collect all the papers in the yard. If these things get out, our family will be in big trouble." The man said with difficulty. Husband, what happened?" "Don't ask. Go. Sigh. Forget it. I'll go myself." The man did not want to explain and went to the yard himself. "Wow. Father, mother, come out and take a look. There's a lot of paper in our yard." At this moment, the words similar to what the little boy said came from the yard next door. The middle-aged man was stunned. The woman came up and asked, "Husband, I don't think we're the only ones who have this. Master Wan's house next door should have it too. Are we still going to pick it up?" "No, he wasn't going to pick it up. Chang'an City is going to change." The man muttered absent-mindedly. "Bastard. This Madame Chui is really a good-for-nothing. Bah. The Chui family likes to bully the common people and bully men and women. They should be struck by lightning. Bah. Yesterday, I saw the Chui family donate money to the Nguyen Tang Foundation and thought they'd changed their mind. Now it seems that the Chui family is not good people. We should report them to the authorities and arrest them. They're worse than pigs and dogs. This Madame Chui is worse than pigs and dogs. How could he do such a deranged thing that would incur the wrath of both man and God? She's really a vicious woman. If she's not killed, the heavens will not tolerate it." As more and more people found the pieces of paper in their yards, the cursing of the Chui family could be heard everywhere in the 108 streets of Chang'an. Obviously, these common people had seen the crimes committed by the Chui family over the years from the pieces of paper. "Master, where did these pieces of paper come from? Is the content on these pieces of paper real or not?" The Fong estate. Fong Xianling tidied up his clothes and was about to go to the morning court when the servants suddenly brought a few pieces of paper over, saying that they were found in the courtyard. He and his wife each took a piece of paper and looked at it carefully. After a while, Lady Fong put down the paper and said with a puzzled expression. Fong Xuanling's face was solemn. He waved his hand and said, "Madam, something big is going to happen. I have to go to the palace quickly. I'll tell you in detail when I come back. Okay. Master, be careful on the road. Although Lady Fong had a jealous personality, she usually listened to Fong Xuanling's words on important matters. Fong Xianling nodded and quickly walked out of the room. The servants outside had already prepared a carriage for him. The Chui family. Someone wants to touch the Chui family. At this juncture, alas, I hope Chong and City won't fall into chaos. In the carriage, Fong Xianling tightly held the confession letter, frowned, and sighed with a worried expression. Chapter 1098. What? Assassins infiltrated the Right Marquis household last night? Is it possible to capture the assassins? In the west court of the Imperial Palace, Lier was dressed in his imperial robe and crown under the service of a palace maid. He was about to go to morning court when Zhao Song suddenly came to report that the Right Marquis household had encountered 2 assassins last night. Old Li instantly lost his composure. In the capital, assassins actually appeared under the emperor's feet. Furthermore, the assassins attacked the imperial court's official residence. Wasn't this openly challenging his dignity as the emperor? Zhao Song replied, Your Majesty, last night, Dugu Xian and Dugu Feiying happened to be present. Of the 2 assassins, one escaped and the other was killed on the spot. Their bodies are still in the Right Marquis household. Oh, Dugu Xian and Dugu Feiying were also present? Why didn't they capture them alive? Lier frowned and asked curiously. Zhao Song bowed. This old servant does not know why the 2 Dugu generals happened to be present, but it was said that the assassin had already been defeated by Dugu Xian. But no one expected him to seek death and directly collide with Dugu Xian's sword. Lier's heart sank. Rather die than surrender. This kind of assassin obviously had an unusual background. Recalling that Li Zixuan went to the Right Marquis household yesterday, his face darkened. Investigate. Investigate the assassin's background. Let Jun Xian pay attention to the Chui family's recent movements. Although he did not want to start a war with the Chui family, but he would not allow the Chui family to jump. Sending assassins to infiltrate the Marquis household had obviously crossed his bottom line, and it was a blatant slap to the emperor's face. This old servant obeys. Zhao Song was not surprised and immediately bowed to receive the order. Your Majesty, not good. Not good. Just at this moment, a servant ran in frantically with a piece of paper in his hand. Lier frowned. What's the matter? That servant raised the paper above his head and said, Your Majesty, this morning, outside the Imperial Palace, there were white pieces of paper. The content of the paper was a confession written by a person named Wan Jinggang. As this matter concerns the Chui family, the courtiers are all waiting outside the Taiji Palace to see His Majesty. Lier's expression changed greatly. He personally went up and took the document from a eunuch's hands and read it with furrowed brows. At this time, Empress Zhang's son also walked out from behind the screen. She stood behind Lier and looked over, also reading the contents. What a Chui family. What a good Wang Shi. Human swine? For our great Tang to have such a venomous woman, she deserves death. Although Lier did not intend to touch the Chui family at this time, the more he read the contents of the paper, the more shocked and furious he became. When he saw that Wang Shi had made Ninyu into a human swine and cruelly tortured her to death, he, the emperor of the human world, could no longer hold it in. Your Majesty, ever since Empress Lu murdered Lady Qi, such a tragic incident has never happened in the Central Plains for hundreds of years. I didn't expect that there would still be someone who would be so deranged. It's truly shocking. Empress Zhangxuan's beautiful eyes also revealed a trace of hatred. Clearly, Wang Shi's actions had reached a point where even Empress Zhang's son, who had always been good-tempered, could not stand it anymore. A murderous intent flashed in Lier's eyes. Then he turned around and patted Empress Zhangxuan's hand, saying, Guanyin, don't be too sad. If the contents are true, I will definitely punish this evil woman severely. Yes, Empress Zhang's son nodded, but she lamented in her heart. So what if I punish her severely? The dead cannot be brought back to life. Let me ask you, when did this confession letter come out? Lier looked at the eunuch and asked in a deep voice. The eunuch hesitated and said, Your Majesty, it is said that it came out early this morning. I reckon it should have come out last night. But I don't know who has such great ability to actually receive at least one confession letter from every household. Last night, Lier's eyes were filled with doubt. Suddenly, he thought of a possibility, and his face immediately darkened. Zhao Song, order Dugu Xian to bring the imperial army and lock down all the gates of Chang'an City. Today, only entry is allowed, no exit is allowed. Lier's eyes were like lightning as he looked at Zhao Song and said. The atmosphere in the room instantly became tense. Yes, Your Majesty. Zhao Song smelled a trace of unusual information. He felt that something big was going to happen in Chang'an City today. Also, tell Li Zishuan to come and see me after the morning court. Yes, all right, I will go to the morning court first. The rest will be discussed after the morning court. Outside Taiji Palace, compared to the past, today was especially lively. Even the word lively was not enough to describe it. Perhaps it was not an exaggeration to say that it was boiling. Preposterous. The Chui family has enjoyed 1,000 years of reputation, but they have committed countless evil deeds. If Your Majesty cannot punish the Chui family severely, I, Wei Zheng, will kill myself on the coiling dragon pillar outside the main hall today. Even though Troll Wei liked to scold people, he was a man with a strong sense of justice. Otherwise, he would not have donated so much money to the Nguyen Tang Foundation a few days ago. He had almost sold everything he had. This morning, when he saw the confession letter in the courtyard, he was shocked. After the shock, he was filled with endless anger. He did not even bother to eat breakfast and rushed into the palace in a huff. Left Prime Minister Wei, please calm down. We still do not know if what is written on the letter is true or false. Let's wait for Your Majesty's verdict before we talk about other things. An imperial censor saw that Wei Zheng was so angry that his face turned purple. He hurried over to calm him down. Bah, bullshit. This confession letter is full of facts. Every evil deed that the Chui family has done is recorded in great detail. Even Wan Jingang's signature has been copied. How can it be false? Besides, this one Jin gang is now being held by the right Marquis household. We will know when the trial begins. Cheng Yao Jin spat a mouthful of old phlegm at the place where the imperial censor was standing and shouted at the top of his voice. He did not have a single good impression of the Chui family. He would not let go of this opportunity to beat a drowning dog. General Yuchi, this one Jin gang is really in the right Marquis household? Towards Cheng Yao Jin, this shameless old man spitting at him. The imperial censor was of course cursing in his heart. However, he knew that he could not argue with this old hooligan. Thus, he found Yuchi Jingda to ask. Yuchi Jingda stroked his beard and said, Jijia is right. Wan Jin gang is indeed in the right Marquis household. In a while, he should be handed over to the Supreme Court. This confession letter was also personally signed by him. Only, I did not know how it spread throughout the entire city. This last sentence was half true and half false. He knew that this was arranged by Li Zishuan. However, he did not understand how Li Zishuan was able to spread the confession letter to every corner of Chang'an City in one night. At the same time, he did not expect that Li Zishuan would make a move on the Chui family so quickly. Chapter 1099. After Yuchi Jingda admitted that the confession was written by Wan Jin gang, the officials outside the Taiji Palace were in an uproar. It's true, under the glory of the heavens, such a dark and filthy thing actually happened. As an important official of the empire, I'm ashamed to face the people. Wei Jing opened his mouth and pounded his chest as he lamented bitterly. This Chui family is so despicable. They did so many filthy things. If we don't punish them severely, the people won't be angry. That's right. Later, we must ask the emperor to punish them severely. At this moment, no matter if it was the civil officials or generals, all of them were infuriated and they gave the Chui clan the harshest condemnation. Many of the court officials that were attached to the Chui clan or related to the Chui clan in Qinghe didn't dare speak at this moment, and all of them wished for nothing more than to stick their heads into their clothes, as they were deeply afraid of being recognized. Fang Xianling, Du Ruhui, Zhangsun Wuji, Xiao Yu, these civil officials couldn't help but look at each other. They all sighed in their hearts that today's court would not be peaceful. Duke of E, when did the right Marquis Mansion have the right to interrogate? Why didn't I know? Lu Dui, the minister of the Supreme Court, looked at Yuqi Jingda with displeasure. This had nothing to do with personal grudges. It was just his duty. Interrogating criminals should be done by the Supreme Court. If the right Marquis Mansion did it, it would be overstepping their authority. Dewey, you've misunderstood this old man. Ever since Wan Jinggang was captured and brought to the Marquis Mansion, no one has interrogated him. These things were voluntarily confessed by his conscience. If you don't believe me, you can go back to the Supreme Court and check his body. See if there are any traces of torture. Yuqi Jingda laughed out loud. Lu Dui was suddenly choked. It's time for the morning court. Officials, go to the court. At this moment, the head eunuch came out of the palace and shouted to the civil and military officials below the stairs. The noisy officials immediately quieted down. They carried the imperial edicts and walked into the Taiji Palace. After a round of greetings, the morning court officially began. Without waiting for the officials to start, Li Er directly said, "Dear officials, you must have received Wan Jingang's confession this morning." The officials all said yes. Fang Xianling stepped forward and said, "Your Majesty, not only have we received it, millions of people in Chang and have also received it. The most important thing now was to stabilize the hearts of the people. Otherwise, Chang would be in chaos. I hope Your Majesty can make a decision soon." Fang Mao's reputation as Du Duan was not for nothing. While the rest of the people were arguing about whether the confession was true or false, Fang Xianling had already seen the most urgent and important thing. Li Er nodded approvingly. Official Fang is right. Due to the urgency of the matter, today's morning court session will be temporarily postponed. Men, present. Immediately, a golden guard in bright armor entered the hall. Li Er said in a deep voice, "Go to the East House of the East County immediately. No matter what method you use, I'll give you an hour to invite Chui, Junchuo, and Wang Shi over." Now that things had developed to this point, even if he didn't want to touch the Chui family at this time, he had to. Otherwise, there might be civil unrest in Chang and city, and the losses would outweigh the gains. He had to choose the lesser of two evils. On the way to Taiji Palace, Li Er had already made his decision. Of course, after this matter, he would definitely settle accounts with Li Zishuan, because to some extent, Li Zishuan's action was tantamount to forcing the emperor to abdicate. However, it was not forcing the emperor, but forcing Li Er to punish the Chui family in advance. "Yes, Your Majesty." The soldier's face turned serious, and he quickly left. Time was money, and time was life. Li Er continued, "Official Fang." Fang Xianling stepped forward and bowed. "Yes, Your Majesty." Li Er said in a clear voice, "I order you to immediately draft a notice to pacify the people in the side hall. Inform the people that in the bright and clear universe and with the majesty of heaven, I will not let any evil person off. No matter who it is, once it is verified that they have violated the laws of the Tang Dynasty, there will be no tolerance. I will give justice to the ghosts in hell and the people in the world. After the notice is written, immediately take it to make a copy and post it in the city." Fang Xianling bowed and said, "Your Majesty is wise. Your Majesty, Your Majesty." After that, the little eunuch in the hall quickly led Fang Xianling to the side hall. Li Er looked at the officials and said, "Yuqi Jingda, Your Majesty." Yuqi Jingda stepped forward and solemnly cupped his fist. Li Er looked at Yuqi Jingda with a complicated expression. Obviously, Yuqi Jingda's shadow was also in this action against the Chui family. Yesterday, He wanted to call the two soldiers who were present when Li Zixuan interrogated Wan Jinggang to the palace for questioning, but now it seemed that there was no need to ask. In the whole matter, even if Yuqi Jingda did not add fuel to the fire, he still turned a blind eye. Otherwise, how could Li Zixuan interrogate Wan Jinggang so easily? Is Wan Jinggang in the right marquee mansion now? Li Er put away his complicated thoughts and then asked. Yuqi Jingda replied, Your Majesty, Wan Jinggang is still in the right marquee mansion now. But last night, there was an assassin who wanted to kill him. Fortunately, Your Majesty had arranged for 300 archers in advance and the 2 generals of the Dugu family to arrive in time. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Once this was said, the civil and military officials were shocked again. There was actually an assassin who dared to sneak into the yamen to carry out an assassination right under the emperor's nose. We already know about this matter. Jingda, you must investigate the identity of the assassin. If necessary, you can ask for help from the Supreme Court. Li Er furrowed his brows and ordered, Go and bring Wan Jinggang over right now. Let him confront the Chui family in a while. Your Majesty, Yuqi Jingda received the order and left. Where is Duan Jixuan? Your Majesty, a general in his 30s, stepped forward and bowed with cupped fists. You are ordered to lead your subordinates, Zhuo Wei, to patrol the city to prevent the people from causing chaos. Your Majesty, Duan Jixuan also received the order and left. Now that everything had been arranged, Li Er was slightly relieved. Next, he just had to wait for the Chui family to come to the court to confront. At the same time, outside the palace, the people were already in an uproar. Some people woke up in the morning and saw the confession letter in the courtyard. Although they were angry, they did not dare to voice out their anger because the other party was the Chui family. Hence, many people's first reaction was to hide the confession letter and not let the Chui family know that the confession letter came from them. But when they discovered that there were confession letters in other places, the anger that had been suppressed in their hearts for a long time finally did not need to be suppressed anymore. With the example of the people blocking the Chui family a few days ago, today, the angry people called their friends and headed toward the Chui family in groups of 3 to 5. They felt injustice for the wronged souls, so they wanted to eliminate the evil. Their hearts were filled with anger, so they wanted to destroy the Chui family, this place of hiding evil. Chapter 1100. Grand Duke, bad news. Bad news. Half an hour ago, Chui Manor. Old housekeeper Wang Yong held a few pieces of paper and hurried towards Chui Junchuo's room in the east courtyard. After Chui Junchuo let him in, he hurriedly said, What is it now? Chui Junchuo did not sleep well last night. When the sky was about to brighten, he barely managed to take a short nap. Now that his sleep was disturbed, he was a little annoyed. Wang Yong said, Grand Duke, bad news. When the servants woke up this morning, they found that there were papers everywhere in the manor. And not only our manor, other families also have them. Chui Junchuo frowned and said with dissatisfaction, It's just a few pieces of paper. How can it make you so flustered? Grand Duke, this paper is Wan Jingang's confession. The old housekeeper's voice had a sobbing and sorrowful tone. Confession. These 3 words were like a bolt from the blue, striking Chui Junchuo until he could not find north. Wan Jinggang confessed. How is this possible? He has not been sent to the Supreme Court, and the right marquee manor does not have the authority to interrogate him. Could it be that he confessed without being pressed? Chui Junchuo stared and said in disbelief. It was just that he probably didn't expect that his unintentional guess was already close to the truth. Wan Jinggang was more or less confessing without being pressed. Grand Duke, I received news this morning that Mei Lian was captured in the right marquee manor last night, but he chose to commit suicide. This old servant guessed that Wan Jinggang might have known that Qi Li and Mei Lian tried to assassinate him last night, so he revealed the truth to the right marquee manor. The old housekeeper cupped his hands and said, Suicide? Chui Junchuo's eyebrows jumped and he rejoiced. But when he thought of the confession from the housekeeper, His mood instantly turned bad. "Show me that confession." "Yes." Taking the confession from the old housekeeper, Chui Junchuo frowned and looked at it carefully. After a while, he angrily snorted, "Goodwan Jingang, I really hate that I recruited this ingrate into the Chui family." The old housekeeper carefully said, "Grand Duke, now that the confession is everywhere, this old servant is worried that as more and more people read the confession, there will definitely be many people coming to the Chui Manor to cause trouble. Furthermore, there would definitely be officials in the imperial court who would impeach the Chui family. You should have made plans earlier." Hearing this, Chui Junchuo's expression changed. If the old butler could think of it, how could he not? However, the current situation was extremely unfavorable to the Chui family. It could be said that the current situation was worse than the worst that he had expected. He didn't expect Wan Jingang to confess so quickly. He also didn't expect Li Zixuan to make a move on the Chui family so quickly. He also didn't expect Li Zixuan to use such a method. This was forcing the emperor to destroy the Chui family. After a long time, Chui Junchuo let out a long sigh. Yes. What should he do now? The public was furious, and the officials in the imperial court were eyeing the Chui family like a tiger watching its prey. The Chui family was facing a great calamity, and they could only do their best to reduce the Chui family's losses. As long as we can leave behind a bloodline, the Chui clan will definitely rise again. The old housekeeper was shocked. He had never seen Chui Junchuo so dispirited. He hurriedly said, "Grand Duke, why don't you and Madame leave Chong and before the imperial edict is issued? After returning to Zhengzhou, you will be sick at home. I don't think the emperor will make things difficult for you. Once the storm is over, you will be safe and sound. Hand over the Wang family. Hand over the murderer. Hand over the Wang family. Hand over the murderer. Hand over the Wang family. Hand over the murderer." Chui Junchuo was very tempted by the old housekeeper's words. However, at this moment, there was a sudden commotion outside the Chui family's gate. Judging by the sound, there should be hundreds of people. "Grand Duke, something bad happened. Something bad happened." There are many scholars and common people at the gate. A servant ran over in a panic and shouted as he ran, "Grand Duke, it seems that the common people have already heard the news. You and Madam should leave from the back door." The old housekeeper's expression changed as he hurriedly advised, "Sai, we can't leave. Now the Chui family's reputation has been ruined, and we have completely become a target of scorn. I guess we will be surrounded by the common people before we can even see the gate of Chang'an. Wang Yong, come with me to take a look." Chui Junchuo sighed deeply and shook his head. "Yes, Grand Duke. Confession letter? Bastard. Damn Wan Jingang. Damn a group of unruly people." In the backyard, Madame Wang, who had just woken up, couldn't help but fly into a rage when she heard about the confession letter and the common people at the gate. The servants were afraid and didn't dare to look at her. They didn't say a word. "Sun Xiang, quick, bring people to the 10-mile slope outside the city and dig out that bitch's body and feed it to the dogs. Otherwise, when the imperial court finds out, they will definitely use that bitch to punish me." Suddenly, Madame Wang screamed crazily, "Yes, Madam." The servants in the house hesitated for a moment, but still followed the order and left. The rest of the servants suddenly felt a chill in their hearts. To meet such a vicious and merciless master, it was really a kind of tragedy. "Hand over Madame Wang. Hand over the murderer. Hand over Madame Wang. Hand over the murderer." Outside the Chui mansion, there were more than a few hundred people, almost 1,000. The angry common people, led by the students of Yanwang College, shouted in unison. That morning, the students of the academy came from Cloud Mountain. They planned to gather at the Warm Tang Foundation as usual and continue their charity work. However, when they entered the city, they couldn't help but see the confession papers that were strewn all over the city. Out of curiosity, many students went to pick one up. After reading the content, the 600-plus students of the academy were all enraged without exception. They were doing good deeds every day, But there were people in the city who were doing evil deeds that were devoid of conscience and humanity. How could they tolerate this? Under the shouts of Li Tai, Chung Chumo, and the other students who hated evil, more than 600 people shouted the slogan, "Hand over Madame Wang, hand over the murderer," and directly killed from Yinqing Gate in the east of Chong and city to Dunhua Square in the southeast of the city. Most of the common people along the way had seen Wan Jingang's confession letter. Some of them wanted to cause trouble at the Chui Mansion, but they were afraid that they would be killed by the Chui Mansion's guards like the troublemakers 2 days ago. They were full of anger and had nowhere to vent it. Now that they heard the students' slogans, how could they endure it? They all joined the army of anti-Chui. When they arrived at the Chui Mansion, the original group of 600 people had become more than 3,000 people. Other common people in Chong and city were also rushing here after hearing the news. The crowd was increasing. The voices were getting louder. The anger was also getting stronger. It all depended on whether the Chui Mansion could withstand the anger of the common people. Chapter 1101. Hand over the Wang family. Hand over the murderer. Hand over the Wang family. Hand over the murderer. Outside the Chui Mansion, the students and commoners were shouting loudly. The servants and servants of the Chui Mansion were on high alert, but with Wan Jinggang as an example, no one dared to come out and attack the commoners. They only guarded the entrance of the Chui Mansion, not letting this group of people in. Damn, why are the Chui family being so cowardly today? I still want to beat up those 2 blind guards. Chung Chumo saw how the servants of the Chui Mansion were cowering and could not help but feel bored. He complained to Li Tai and the rest. Chumo, you think too highly of this group of people. We are students of Yin Huang College. They dare to come out and lay a finger on us? Sun Ziffin sneered. Even if they were not students of the Yin Huang College, this group of people were either rich or respectable, each of them having an extraordinary status. The servants of the Chui family would definitely not dare to act so rudely like last time. But we can't just waste time like this. Chinke, you have a lot of ideas. Come up with an idea. Why don't we just charge in? Chung Chumo was a little anxious. Chumo, don't be rash. Li Tai shook his head. He looked at the group of servants who were blocking the entrance of the Chui Mansion. His eyes flashed, and he whispered, "Oh right, Chonyo, bring a few people to guard the back door of the Chui Mansion. See if there's a chance to enter from there." Ching Chumo was overjoyed. He laughed and said, "Hee hee, Chinke, you're still the most cunning one. Then I'll go take a look with Bao Lin and the rest." After that, he did not care about Li Tai rolling his eyes at him. He called a few skilled students and squeezed through the crowd to go to the back door of the Chui Mansion. "Grandfather, there's so many people outside. I think you should go to the manor outside the city to lie low for a while." At the entrance of the Chui Manor, Chui Junchuo peeked through the crack of the door and looked at the densely packed crowd outside. He couldn't help but feel his scalp go numb, because he felt that those angry commoners outside looked like they wanted to eat people, eat their Chui family's people. To think that he, Chui Junchuo, had lived a glorious life. Now that he was old, he had to suffer the curses of the people. It was truly a pity. Wait for the imperial edict. It should be soon. We can only wait for His Majesty's decision. Chui Junchuo sighed, and with her hands clasped behind her back, she walked into the manor with a desolate face. The Chui family has occupied fertile land, oppressed the common people, abducted common women, and tortured and killed the maidservants. Hand over the Wang family and the murderer. Hand over the Wang family and the murderer. Outside the Chui Manor, as more and more people came, more and more people came. In less than 15 minutes, more than 2,000 people came. Naturally, the cries of the people became louder and louder. Towards the end, the students of the academy did not even need to organize them. They spontaneously began to shout slogans over and over again. Ever since the establishment of the Tang Empire, there had never been such a grand event in Chang'an City. However, today's grand event was indeed a funeral for the Chui family. It was also a matter of life and death for the Chui family. You better behave yourself. Get over here. Don't even think about running. Come, kneel. Hey, make way, make way. At this moment, a group of people slowly squeezed from the back of the crowd. After a lot of effort, they finally squeezed into the group of Yanhuang college students. Chonyo, what are you doing? Li Tai saw Chang Chumo, who had gone to the back door of the Chui Manor to look for an opportunity, come over with two servants of the Chui Manor. He could not help but ask with a puzzled face. Hey, Chinke, Ziffin, Ku, I just caught two sneaky and shifty-eyed servants of the Chui family at the back door. After questioning them, I actually got a big piece of news. Ching Chumo made the two unlucky servants kneel down and then smiled proudly at Li Tai and the rest. What news? Li Ko asked. Ching Chumo did not directly answer. Instead, he kicked the servant in front of him and said, Hey, Sun Xiang, right? This person in front of you is His Highness King of Han, and this is His Highness King of Wei. Hurry up and tell them what your mistress wants you to do. Only then will you be safe. Otherwise, no one will be able to protect you. When he heard that the two young men in front of him were both kings, the servant was first afraid. Then he seemed to see some hope. The Chui family was now in a precarious situation. If he could cling onto the thighs of these two kings, he might really be able to survive. Thus, he quickly said, Young Master Chung, I'll talk. Chung Chumo nodded his head in satisfaction. Then, he turned around and looked at the people behind him. He used his internal energy and said loudly, Everyone quiet down. I just caught a servant at the back door of the Chui Manor. Everyone quiet down and listen to what this servant has to say. Chung Chumo's voice was mixed with internal energy and transmitted to everyone's ears. The noisy crowd immediately quieted down. Sun Xiang, mistress has always treated you well. How can you do something that betrays her? A servant guarding the entrance of the Chui Manor couldn't help but shout at this moment. Noisy. Chung Chumo dashed forward and gave him a big slap on the face. Receiving this angry slap, the servant spat out a mouthful of blood and was no longer able to speak. Sun Xiang, quickly say it. Chung Chumo clapped his hands and said lightly. Sun Xiang shrunk his neck and looked at Chung Chumo, this violent maniac, with some fear. Then he said, I'm a servant of the Chui Manor. This morning, after Mistress found out that the entire city was filled with Master Wan. No, the entire city was filled with Wan Jingang's confession. She was worried that the imperial court would find Miss Nianyu's body based on the clues in the confession. Thus, she ordered me to go to the 10-mile slope outside the city, to the 10-mile slope to dig out Nianyu's body and feed it to the dogs. Wow! After hearing this, the crowd was in an uproar. The people who were already angry became even angrier. When their anger couldn't be tolerated, they could only explode. She didn't even let go of a dead person. This mistress of the Chui family is so cruel. Beast. She's worse than pigs and dogs. Wang deserves to die. It's really intolerable that such a vicious woman is not killed. Kill Wang. Kill Wang. Thousands of people were about to riot in an instant. The servant guarding the entrance of the Chui Manor suddenly felt the pressure. How can this Mistress Chui be so inhumane? Qin Ke, I can't stand it anymore. After hearing this, Li Kun gnashed his teeth. If it wasn't for his special identity as a prince, he would have already killed his way in. Nianyu, I'm Nianyu. Mother has let you down. At some point, an old woman and an old man squeezed to the front of the crowd. The old woman collapsed in front of the Chui Manor and cried bitterly. Her sobs were like the wail of a dying beast. The people of Chang, and at the entrance of the Chui Manor, all shed tears. Evil woman of the Chui family, give me back my daughter's life. This old man will not rest until the Chui family is dead. The stooped old man beside the woman also sat down and said with a bitter expression. Chapter 1102. These two people seem to be Nianyu's parents. Look at them. Did they only know that their daughter was killed today? The sudden appearance of a couple in front of the Chui mansion instantly attracted the attention of the people. Old man, are you Nianyu's family? Di Xuan was closer to the couple, so he squatted down and asked softly. Yes, I'm Jean de Bayo, and Ninyu is my poor daughter. My Ninyu." The old man wiped his tears and said sorrowfully, "Old man, didn't you know that your daughter was killed before?" Shuan saw that the grief on the old man's face didn't seem to be fake, so he was a little puzzled. Before the old man could say anything, the old woman interrupted and said sadly, "In the past, the Chui family only said that our daughter died in childbirth because she was pregnant with Master Chui's flesh and blood, but who knew that she was made into a human swine by Madame Chui? My poor you." Hearing the word human swine, Zhang de Bao could no longer control his emotions. He beat his chest and said sadly, "If I had known that Ninyu was tortured like this in the Chui mansion, I would have rushed into the Chui mansion to save her, even if I had to give up my life. Hateful. Madame Chui is a beast in appearance. How dare she mistreat my Ninyu like this? I regret it. I regret that I sold Ninyu into the Chui family, into this den of tigers and wolves. A debt must be paid with money, and a life for a life. I know that I can't do anything to Madame Chui, but I can kill myself in front of the Chui mansion and bring them some bad luck." Before he finished speaking, Zhang de Bao's head had already slammed into the stone lion in front of the Chui mansion. Old man, wait. Although Shuan sensed that something was wrong, his reaction was still half a beat slower. He only managed to grab the corner of Zhang de Bao's clothes. Rip, perhaps the material of Zhang de Bao's clothes wasn't good enough, or perhaps Zhang de Bao was running too hard, but the corner of his shirt that was pulled up by Shuan was torn into two like a thin piece of paper. However, his speed didn't slow down at all. Bang! Shuan could not help but close his eyes. To be honest, he couldn't help but secretly wipe away 2 drops of tears when he read about Ninyu's experience in the confession letter in the morning. Now, he really couldn't bear to see Zhang de Bao's miserable appearance with his head broken and bleeding. Little Ku, are you all right? It's His Highness, the King of Han." His Highness King of Han saved Zhang de Bao. Great! Shuan, who had his eyes closed, didn't hear the expected miserable cries. Instead, he heard the cheers of the people around him. He couldn't help feeling curious and opened his eyes at once. Zhang de Bao's head was pressed against Li Ku's stomach, and Li Ku's back was leaning against the stone lion. He looked like he was in pain. Obviously, Li Ku had relied on his superior agility to act as a meat cushion at the crucial moment. Otherwise, Zhang de Bao's head would have been smashed. Old man, if you die, how am I supposed to live?" The old woman finally reacted. She rolled and crawled to Zhang de Bao's side and cried loudly, "Old woman, if you have any grievances, you can report it to the government. The government will definitely give you justice. But don't do such a thing that hurts your loved ones and makes your enemies happy. I believe that your daughter's spirit in heaven doesn't want you to do this." Li Ku grinned. Although he knew Kung Fu, he didn't learn external Kung Fu, such as Golden Bell Shield or Iron Shirt. Just now, he almost vomited out the breakfast he had in the morning. Of course, the main reason was that Zhang de Bao hit too hard in grief and indignation. At this time, Li Ku pressed Zhang de Bao's shoulders and said solemnly word by word, "The government? Justice? How powerful is the Chui family? How can the government uphold justice for me? I don't expect it. Little Lang Jun, get out of the way. I am sorry for my Ninyu. Let me die." Zhang de Bao shook his head gloomily. "Old man, you can't die. What will I do if you die?" The old woman cried. Li Ku frowned and said in a low voice, "Old woman, I am the current king of Han, and this is His Highness King of Wei. Today, this prince promises you that this prince will help you get justice for your daughter. Anyone who violates the Tang Empire's law should be punished accordingly. The Chui family is no exception." "That's right. Old woman, don't worry. I will help you get justice for Miss Ninyu." Li Tai also stepped forward and said. The old man and the old woman were shocked and hurriedly bowed to Li Ku and Li Tai. "Greetings to your Highness King of Wei and King of Han. I just offended your Highness King of Han. I really deserve to die." Li Tai and Li Ku said, "You don't have to be so polite." Then Li Ku said, "Old woman, look carefully. Today, I will get justice for you." As soon as he finished speaking, Li Ku turned around and stared at the group of servants that were guarding the entrance of the Chui estate as he said, "All of you are clearly aware of the Chui clan's actions. Presently, there are only two paths before all of you. The first is to continue following behind the Chui clan and act as their accomplices, and the other is to abandon the darkness for the light and move aside immediately. Choose the first choice, death. The second choice, life. I will only give you half a cup of tea's time to think about it." What happened today was too shocking. Although Li Kun knew that Li Er didn't intend to hurt the aristocratic families, and he also knew that if he interfered in this matter with his identity, it would definitely bring criticism. But some things could be tolerated, and some things could not be tolerated. Especially Zhang Debao's words and actions before, which touched his heart, made him not want to care about anything else at the moment. He just wanted to help the maid he had never met before to get justice. As soon as his voice fell, the servants suddenly looked at each other. But even after half a cup of tea's time, they still didn't move. Perhaps they believed that the Chui family, which had been glorious for thousands of years, would not fall just like that. Li Ku sneered and shouted to the people behind him, "Good. Today, the lady of the Chui family, Wang Shi, is vicious and merciless. She cruelly killed the maid Ninyu and turned her into a human swine. This is really shocking and infuriating. What's more hateful is that after Ninyu died, Wang Shi still didn't let her go. She sent people to dig up her body and feed it to the dogs. Such a wicked woman, who was born as a human, should pay with her life. According to the law, she should be punished. Arrest Wang Shi." Even the dignified king of Han was so moved in his heart. So how could the people who had long been filled with anger, eager to fight, and eager to give it a try remain indifferent? They heard this and shouted, "Arrest Wang Shi! Arrest Wang Shi!" They said so, and at the same time they did so. When an ordinary man is angry, blood splatters 5 steps. The thousands of people began to slowly press forward. Looking at this posture, it was as if they were going to flatten the Chui family. Chapter 1103. Don't come over. Don't come over. You dare to barge into private residences in broad daylight. Be careful that I don't send you to see the officials. Seeing the army pressing in, the servants of the Chui family started to feel terror. There were only a dozen of them. How could they be a match for thousands of common people and students? Also, many of these students were of noble status. Even if they wanted to attack, they did not dare to. Capture Wang Shi. Capture Wang Shi. At this time, there was no need for anyone to command. Wang Shi had sent people out of the city to destroy the corpses and evidence. Zhang Debao had angrily hit the stone lion. These two matters ignited the anger of the common people. The people of Guangzhou never lacked courage. Previously, they had been angry, but due to the power of the Chui family, they did not dare to act rashly. But when a person's anger could not be suppressed, then they would either die in silence or explode in silence. This group of people filled with courage chose to explode in the end. The anger of the Son of Heaven, millions of corpses, blood for thousands of miles. The anger of an ordinary man, 2 corpses, blood for 5 steps. Even a clay figurine had a temper, much less these strong men of Guangzhou. The prestigious families that had been high up for almost 1,000 years were so insignificant and lowly in front of the angry common people. The servants of the Chui family retreated again and again. In the end, they had no place to retreat because behind them was the gates of the Chui family. Charge! Charge in! Capture Wang Shi! Capture Wang Shi! Someone shouted loudly. The common people threw away their fear and pressed towards the servants in front of the gates of the Chui family. It was really pressing. Facing this enormous flow of people, the servants of the Chui family were like small boats in the ocean, insignificant and powerless. This was the power of the common people. This was the power of the common people that those high and mighty people usually said to be weak. After today, after knowing how powerful they were, There might be fewer people in the aristocratic families and fewer tragedies like Nianyu. Nianyu, today, these common people will help you get justice. While they are late, justice has not been absent. On a beam across from the Chui mansion, Lisa Xuan was holding a jug of wine and coldly watching from the sidelines. At this moment, he saw the citizens rushing towards the Chui mansion, so he poured himself a cup of wine and murmured. Of course, the main reason he came here was because he was worried. If the Chui family sent out powerful experts to kill the commoners, he could take care of them. After all, there were many of his students here. Boom! Just at this moment, the Chui Manor's iron gates, which had stood tall for thousands of years, under the impact of the commoners, were basically unable to put up any resistance and instantly collapsed. It was a pity that the door had just been fixed after Li Zishuan damaged it a few days ago. But now, he was being stepped on again. Run quickly. The people outside are rushing in. The maids and servants of the Chui Manor, upon seeing the manor's door collapsing and countless people rushing in, screamed and screamed as they frantically ran for their lives towards the direction of the backyard. Although the martial artists and guards in the yard knew martial arts, when faced with thousands of commoners, no matter how high their martial arts skills were, they would not dare to rush in and send themselves to death. The qualified martial artists had already flown over the walls of the yard with the advantage of their Qinggong skills. The unqualified martial artists, whose Qinggong skills were not good, could only escape to the backyard with the maids and servants. Instantly, like an eagle chasing a flock of chicks, a flock of eagles was chasing a flock of chicks towards the backyard. As time passed, the space for these chicks to survive would only become smaller and smaller. Capture the Wang family. Capture the Wang family. The flood of 4,000 to 5,000 people pushed towards the backyard while letting out earth-shattering shouts. F***CK. Who is that bastard? How dare he take the opportunity to bully the Chui Manor's maids? Baolin, bring people to capture that bastard. After the commoners rushed into the Chui Manor, although most of them were heading towards the backyard to capture the Wang family, there were still some who wanted to take advantage of the chaos, such as stealing, molesting, or raping the maids of the Chui Manor. The ugliness of human nature was revealed in the chaos. Chung Chumo's sharp eyes saw a rascally young man hugging a maid and trying to molest her. He immediately roared in anger. Yes, Brother Chanyo. Yuchi Balan responded. Without calling for anyone else, he strode up to the man and lifted him up with one hand, then slammed him onto the ground. Chinke, Virgo, we can't go on like this. Although the Chui family is despicable, there are only a few people who have committed crimes. These maids are innocent. If we don't take any measures, many innocent people will suffer today. When that happens, Father will definitely blame. Yamacho. Li Ku frowned as he spoke to the people around him. Obviously, he had already guessed that the source of this turmoil, or rather, the initiator, was Li Zishuan. It was not hard to guess. Anyone who had interacted with Li Zishuan and knew about his recent activities would be able to guess it. Li Tai nodded and said, Little Ke, you are right. We can't let the commoners do as they please. I think it's better to have all the students of the college spread out in groups of 10 to maintain order. Little Ke, you are skilled in martial arts, so you take command. Li Ke did not decline. Under his command, the people from the Yanwang College immediately split into over 60 small teams. They spread out in groups and scattered around the Chui residence. If they saw anyone doing something illegal, they would go forward to stop it. They were from the college and represented Yanwang College. Normal hooligans would not dare to do anything to them in front of so many commoners. As a result, the number of rapes and thefts was greatly reduced. These unruly commoners are really lawless. Guards, call the guards. Call the martial artists. Call the martial arts experts in the Chui Manor. Let them kill all these unruly commoners. Kill them all. The backyard of the Chui residence was in a mess. Wang Shi was in a state of madness. She was throwing things at the servants while shouting incoherently. Trash! You are not allowed to run. The Chui family has always provided you with good food and drinks. Now all of you. Otherwise, you will not be fed in the future. I will turn all of you into human swine." At this moment, Wang Shi saw a group of maids and servants escaping from the front yard. She took out a sword from somewhere and slashed at those people. The maidservants and servants hurriedly scattered in all directions. Wang Shi wanted to chase after them, but she couldn't. She could only stand there and curse. Capture Wang Shi. Turn Wang Shi into human swine. At the door of the backyard, the commoners finally appeared. When Wang Shi heard that the commoners wanted to turn her into human swine, she was so scared that her legs trembled. Unruly commoners. A bunch of unruly commoners. Guards, whoever can kill these unruly commoners, I will give you 10,000 strings of cash. No, 100,000 strings of cash. Wang Shi held her sword and retreated. Her eyes were wide open and her face was full of fear. Chapter 1104. 100,000 strings of cash. If this were any other time, many people would be willing to help Wang Shi kill someone for 100 strings of cash, let alone 100,000 strings of cash. But now, even if they were offered 1,000,000 strings of cash, no one would be willing to help her at this time, let alone 100,000 strings of cash. Look, that's Wang Shi. It didn't take long for the citizens to swarm into the backyard. Someone recognized Wang Shi, who was holding a sword and hysterical as if she had gone mad, and pointed her out loudly. "Catch Wang Shi. Make her into a human swine." Yes, we have to let this evil woman have a taste of being made into a human swine. The citizens roared one after another. "Don't come over. Don't come over." When had Wang Shi ever encountered such a situation before? With a panicked expression, she actually placed the sword against her own neck. She retreated while speaking in fear. The maids and servants around her had already run far away from her. Even when they saw her move, no one came to stop her. "Look, the old master of the Chui family is here." At this moment, someone shouted, and the citizens immediately quietened down. The crowd opened up a path, and Chui Junchuo walked over with more than a dozen armed guards. Don't come over. I don't want to be made into a human swine. Don't come over." At this moment, Wang Shi's mind was no longer that of a normal person's. Chui Junchuo and the others walked toward her, but she mistook them for citizens who wanted to kill her. Her body trembled, and she didn't even notice that the sword had left a bloody mark on her neck. "Wang Weizhu, take a good look. I'm here." Chui Junchuo growled at Wang Shi with a dark expression. Don't come over. I don't want to be made into a human swine." Wang Shi was even more terrified. She screamed and exerted force with her hand, and the sword in her hand slit her throat without any resistance. She immediately collapsed to the ground, leaving behind a pool of blood. Bam! Everyone fell silent. No one would have thought that the dignified matriarch of the Chui family would be so frightened by a group of citizens that she committed suicide. Although this venomous woman deserved to die, the commoners felt that such a death was too easy for her. Chui Junchuo took a few deep breaths. He did not expect that the people would invade the Chui residence in such a large scale. Now that the Chui residence had been destroyed, Wang Shi had committed suicide, and the Chui family had become the laughingstock of the world. This result was worse than the worst that he had expected. He glanced at Madame Wang's corpse, then turned to look at the vast crowd behind him. With all his strength, he said in a deep voice, "I am Chui Junchuo." He was the former master of the Chui family. The Chui family has indeed done a lot of wrong things in recent years, and Wang Weizhu really shouldn't kill Ninyu privately. It's my fault for not managing the family well. But now that the Wang family is dead and the mastermind has been eliminated, why don't all of you disperse? These County Duke, Chui Junchuo. Many people knew about this person. Hearing him say this, many people subconsciously prepared to give up. In any case, the most vicious Wang Shi in their eyes was already dead. There was no point in staying here any longer. Although Madame Wang is dead, But what about the people that the Chui family has invaded and kidnapped over the years? Just when some people wanted to leave, someone in the crowd shouted, and the crowd became restless again. That's right. The Chui family has done a lot of evil in the past. They have invaded so much land and kidnapped women. How can the death of Madame Wang solve it? Yes, all the evildoers of the Chui family must be punished. Chui Junchuo frowned, but he was secretly anxious. He was anxious that the people from the imperial court had not arrived yet. That's right, at this time, he would rather go to the imperial court to be judged than to reason with these people. Because most of the civil and military officials in the imperial court were gentle people, and because of the large number of these people, they might directly rush up and kill all the people of the Chui family. As the saying goes, those who do evil are doomed to destruction. When the Chui family did those evil things back then, did they think that they would be punished today? At this time, a faint voice came from afar. Although the voice was not loud, it reached the ears of everyone present. Who's that? Chui Junchuo's gaze froze as he saw Li Zixuan flying over the heads of the crowd and landing steadily at the front of the crowd. Marquis Yong'an, did you enjoy watching the show from aside? When enemies meet, their eyes are exceptionally red. At this time, Chui Junchuo of course hated Li Zixuan, but more than that, there was a trace of indescribable complexity. At first, he did not think that he would lose. Yesterday, he even had the thought of turning defeat into victory and retaliating against Li Zixuan. But he did not expect that after just one night, Li Zixuan had successfully made the Chui family, a 1,000-year-old aristocratic family, into a street rat that everyone wanted to beat up. A 1,000-year-old reputation, in the end, could not win against that thin confession. But in the end, whose fault was this? If the Chui family did not do those dirty things, even if Li Zixuan had a grudge with the Chui family, could he make up something out of nothing? A 1,000-mile dike collapsed by an anthole. A 1,000-year-old aristocratic family, in the end, was destroyed in the hands of a pig like Madame Wang. Watch the show. This marquis is not watching the show. This marquis is using this grand scene to pay tribute to Miss Ninyu in the underworld, to ask her to rest in peace. Li Zixuan stood with his hands behind his back and said in a low voice. At the same time, he was secretly sizing up Chui Junchuo. He had fought with Chui Junchuo several times, but it was always in the dark. Today was their first time, and probably their last time. Hearing this, Chui Junchuo's expression changed several times. After a long time, he said, that Ninyu is just a little maid in the Chui family. If she knew that in the future, she would be able to make the Marquis of Yong and bring so many people to seek justice for her, she would probably feel lucky, right? Li Zixuan sneered. Lucky? The dead cannot come back to life. If possible, who in the world would not want to keep living? Dead is dead. Even if this marquis avenged her, she would not feel lucky. She should regret entering the Chui family and meeting Madame Wang, this poisonous woman, and Chui Shanfu, this coward. Chui Junchuo was a little angry. The Chui family was almost dead, and Li Zixuan still wanted to step on the corpses. This was too much. The imperial edict has arrived. Unrelated people immediately make way. At this moment, a group of imperial guards rushed into the Chui family and rushed into the backyard. Then, they spread out and barely surrounded the people in the backyard. Why was it barely? This was because there were too many people in the backyard. The less than 100 imperial guards that they had brought with them were simply not enough to deal with them. Then, a general in silver armor came forward and said loudly, His Majesty has decreed that all people should immediately disperse. His Majesty will personally deal with the matter of the Chui family. He will definitely give justice to Ninyu and the people of the world. Chapter 1105. The young general in silver armor was Sun Jiping. He had participated in the Battle of Snake Spirit Mountain and could be considered as an old acquaintance of Li Zixuan. After such a long time, he had been promoted from a small leader to a guard with a sword in front of the palace. he could be considered to have a prosperous career. When the people heard Sun Jiping say that Li Zishuan would deal with this matter personally, they did not want to make a fuss and left. The students of the academy did not leave. At this time, Li Ke went to Li Zishuan and whispered a few words in his ear. Li Zishuan nodded gently and did not say anything. Sun Jiping did not have time to chat with Li Zishuan at this moment. He looked at the people of the Chui family and said loudly, "His Majesty has an order. Chui Zhenshuo, East Commandery Duke of the Chui family, and Madame Wang, enter the palace immediately. There must be no delay." Chui Zhenshuo secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He had been looking forward to it for a long time. Finally, the people from the palace came. It was better for the imperial court to judge the Chui family than the people. After all, the imperial court would be reasonable. It was difficult to reason with the angry people. "General, Madame Wang committed suicide a quarter of an hour ago. I'll go with you." Chui Zhenshuo stepped forward and said. After that, he looked back at Madame Wang, who was lying in a pool of blood. Although this woman was really hateful and even dragged the Chui family into the abyss of public opinion, she was still the former Madame Wang of the Chui family. Saving some dignity for her was saving the Chui family's dignity. Sun Jiping frowned. He followed Chui Zhenshuo's gaze and saw a woman in gorgeous clothes lying in a pool of blood. There was a blood-stained sword beside her. After a moment of silence, he shook his head and said, "East Commandery Duke, it's not that I don't understand people's feelings, but His Majesty personally ordered me to invite you and Madame Wang into the palace no matter what. Guards, prepare an ox cart and carry Madame Wang's body into the palace." "Yes, General." After Sun Jiping finished speaking, 2 soldiers immediately stepped forward and carried Madame Wang's body. "You, General Sun, can you make an exception?" Chui Zhenshuo could not help but be angry. But after thinking of the Chui family's current situation, he restrained himself. Sun Jiping shook his head. His meaning was self-evident. Therefore, Chui Zhenshuo could only watch as the 2 imperial guards carried Mrs. Wang's body away. Blood flowed all the way. Most of the members of the imperial army had been on the battlefield before, so they didn't fear corpses and blood. However, the students of Yinwang College were different. This was the first time most of them had seen a dead body, and it was the first time they had smelled such a thick stench of blood. Many of the students bent down and vomited. Li Zishuan did not say anything. He felt that there was nothing wrong with letting the students see the light of blood earlier. Perhaps some of them would have to go to the battlefield in the future. "East County Duke, please go ahead as well." After Wang Shi was loaded onto the ox cart, Sun Jiping pointed to a prisoner's cart next to him and said to Chui Zhenshuo, there was no other way. Lier had given him a strict order. There was only 1 hour in total. He couldn't possibly let Chui Zhenshuo run behind the horses, but, right? Or let Chui Zhenshuo ride a horse behind him. If the criminal got lost, how was he going to explain himself? After thinking about it, only the prisoner's cart was more reliable. It could guarantee the speed and ensure that the criminal wouldn't escape. Anyway, in Sun Jiping's opinion, the Chui family would definitely not be able to make a comeback this time. There was no need to be afraid of Chui Zhenshuo's identity. Chui Zhenshuo's expression changed. After hesitating for a moment, he finally sighed and walked toward the prisoner's cart. Before entering the prison carriage, he looked at Li Zishuan with a complicated gaze and said, "This old man never thought that there would be a day when I would become a prisoner. This old man also never thought that I would be defeated by you. Marquis Yongin, I have underestimated you after all. You are the variable of the aristocratic families, and also the variable of the Tang Empire." Li Zishuan shook his head and said expressionlessly, "East County Duke, you are not a stupid person. You should understand that the Chui family's ending today is not because of me, but because the people of the Chui family don't know how to respect and do all kinds of evil." Hearing this, Chui Zhenshuo sighed and then got on the prisoner's cart. Sun Jiping waved his hand, and the imperial guards quickly left the backyard of the Chui family. At this time, he had time to say goodbye to Li Zishuan. "Marquis, His Majesty's order is urgent. I will chat with Marquis another day." I will leave first today. General Sun, please wait. Li Zishuan smiled and cupped his fists in return. He pointed to the dozen or so commoners who were tied up in the corner of the courtyard and said, "These people are all criminals who took the opportunity to steal property and molest maids in the chaos just now. They have been tied up by my students. Now, I'll have to trouble General Sun to bring people to send them to the Supreme Court." Sun Jiping was a little surprised and said, "There is such a thing? Marquis, please help me catch these criminals. I will report it to His Majesty and ask for a reward for Marquis." Li Zishuan waved his hand and said, "No need. This has nothing to do with me. It was all done by the students of the academy. If you want to ask for a reward, you should ask for a reward for them. General Sun, you should quickly return to the palace and report." Sun Jiping suddenly woke up and quickly said, "Then I will leave 20 Imperial Guards to help Marquis take these criminals to the Supreme Court. I will take my leave first." "Okay." Li Zishuan nodded. Sun Jiping took Cui Junchuo and Wang Shi's corpse and rushed to the palace. Cui Junchuo, who was standing in the prisoner's cart, might be thrown vegetables or rotten eggs by the people on the road. Li Zishuan didn't care about this. What he needed to consider now was the problem of dealing with the aftermath. "Today, you all performed very well. If it wasn't for you stopping these people from doing evil, more innocent maids would have been harmed today. At that time, I would have become a sinner. I am very pleased that you all were able to plan and act according to the situation. I am very satisfied with this batch of students from Yinhuang College. You are the pride of the academy." Li Zishuan turned around and looked at the group of travel-worn youths. He thought that if it wasn't for them organizing at the last minute to maintain order, those ruffians who had mixed into the crowd would have taken advantage of the chaos to do whatever they wanted. Once those people lost the restraint of the rules, they could do anything evil. Therefore, he said to the students with a gratified face, he wasn't being modest, nor was he being pretentious. He was sincerely grateful to this group of students. Without them, today's good thing would have turned into a bad thing. He would also blame himself for the innocent maids for a long time. "Yamacho, you are too serious. These are all things that we should do," Lika said with a smile. "That's right. Yamacho, these are all things that we should do," the rest of the students said one after another. Today's experience filled them with a sense of accomplishment. They would probably never forget it for the rest of their lives. "Thank you, Marquis Yong, and thank you all young gentlemen." At this time, the Cui family's maid spontaneously came over and bowed to Li Zishuan and the students to express their gratitude. Chapter 1106. "All right, you can all go about your own business. I will personally send these rascals to the Supreme Court." In the backyard of the Cui residence, after receiving the heartfelt gratitude from the maids of the Cui residence, this group of young lads who were in the middle of puberty suddenly felt a little smug. Li Zishuan hurriedly waved his hand and chased them away. "Hee Yamacho, why don't we help you send these people to the Supreme Court?" Sun Ziffin chuckled. Li Zishuan slapped the little fatty's head and said crossly, "I think you're just trying to slack off and not work, aren't you? Quickly go to the foundation and help." "Io, Yamacho, you are wrongly accusing a good person. I'm just afraid that you will be tired," Sun Ziffin shouted mischievously. The students laughed, but they still followed Li Zishuan's request and returned to the Warm Tang Foundation. Li Zishuan watched the students leave with a complicated gaze. He was about to order the guards to take away these rascals when the Cui residence's servants all knelt down in front of him. "Marquis, now that the Cui family is gone, please take us in, Marquis. We are all able to endure hardships." The other servants were also eager to try. Li Zishuan's family treated the servants well. This was basically known by everyone in Chang'an. For these servants, to be able to enter the Li residence was tantamount to entering heaven. Li Zishuan frowned and said, "This Marquis's residence does not lack servants. Moreover, the Emperor has not made a decision on how to deal with the Cui family. You should wait a little longer. Even if the Cui family is really gone, you could go back to your hometown and find other ways to make a living instead of continuing to be servants. Now that the world is peaceful and the emperor is very kind to the people. This marquis believes that as long as you are hard-working, your life will not be bad. Marquis, but we are all slaves. How can we make a living? Everyone says that Marquis is unparalleled benevolence. I hope that Marquis can be kind and take us in. The crowd hesitated for a moment, and a slightly beautiful servant girl said pitifully to Lisa Schwan. In ancient times, there were 5 types of household registration. The first was noble registration, usually for aristocratic families. The second was good registration, which was for ordinary people. The third was merchant registration, which, as the name suggested, was for merchants. The fourth was slave registration, which was the status of slaves. Once sold, they may be slaves for life, unless the master was generous and was willing to give the government a large sum of money. The fifth was cheap registration, which was for prostitutes, entertainers, and so on. And so on. Lisa Schwan's frown deepened. Not to mention that his residence didn't lack maids and servants. Even if he did, he wouldn't hire them here. First of all, who knew which of these people were loyal and which were traitors? Furthermore, that maid's way of talking about moral coercion made him feel disgusted. If the Chui family really falls apart, this marquis will petition His Majesty to abolish your slave status and return you the status of good citizens. As I said before, the world is peaceful now. As long as one is diligent, one will definitely not starve. Lisa Schwan said expressionlessly. After saying that, he turned around and called for a group of imperial guards to pick up the thugs in the corner. They left the Chui residence and headed in the direction of the Supreme Court. After transmigrating to the Tang Dynasty, although Lisa Schwan had become a high-ranking official, this was the first time he went to the Supreme Court. Speaking of which, if it weren't for a few imperial guards leading the way, he probably wouldn't have known which direction the Supreme Court's door was facing. Who asked him to be an otaku? Unless it was absolutely necessary, he would definitely not go out, let alone wander around aimlessly. If it was someone else who transmigrated, they would definitely tour the entire Chang and city in less than a week. After all, this was a traditional Tang Dynasty building. The Supreme Court was located in Yining Lane. Yining Lane was beside the Kaiyuan Gate in the northwest corner of Chang and city. The Chui family was located in the southeast corner of Chang and city. From the southeast corner of Chang and city to the northwest corner of Chang and city, the journey was about 30 kilometers. Luckily, the imperial guards found a horse and a few ox carts from the Chui family. A group of people rode on the horses and tied the criminals to the ox carts. The speed was much faster than walking on foot. Otherwise, if they were to walk on foot, it would probably take half a day. Even so, Lisa Schwan's group still had to spend nearly 2 hours to reach the Court of Justice in charge of the Great Tang's prisons, the Court of Judicial Review. If one were to compare it to the modern system, the Court of Judicial Review was equivalent to the Supreme Court. Normally, when there was a major case, the Supreme Court, Ministry of Justice, and the Censorate would send people to try it together. It was called the Three Departments Trial, but later on, it had a more popular name, Three Departments Trial. Greetings, Marquis Yong, and seeing Lisa Schwan and the rest walking towards the Supreme Court, the 2 soldiers at the door hurriedly bowed. Although Lisa Schwan did not know them, they recognized Lisa Schwan. After all, this fellow was the man of the hour in Chang and city this year. Is Liu Tingwei here? Or is Sun Shaoqing here? Lisa Schwan nodded and asked. The current minister of the Supreme Court was Liu Dewey, and the head of court was another title for the minister of the Supreme Court. Normally, people would not directly address him as the minister of Court X, but as the head of Court X. This was because when the Supreme Court was first established in the Han Dynasty, the highest official in it was called the head of court, although the title was changed to the minister of the Supreme Court during the Northern and Southern dynasties. The Tang people were still used to calling him the head of court. This was a common knowledge that Lisa Schwan had learned after being in the officialdom for so long. There were 2 Shaoqing in the Supreme Court. One was Sun Fujia, who was an old acquaintance of Lisa Schwan. The other was Dai Zhou, who was promoted by Lisa Schwan in October this year. Lisa Schwan had never met him before, but he had heard of him in his previous life. Replying to Marquis, Lu Tingwei and the two Shaoqing are not in the office. They should still be in the morning court. The soldier cupped his fists and replied, "They are still in the morning court." Li Zishuan could not help but mutter. It was almost 5 in the morning. According to the usual practice, the morning court should have ended by now. It seemed that today's morning court will be very lively. These people have committed the crime of theft and indecent assault. Lock them in the prison first. When Lu Tingwei returns later, I will explain to him in detail. Li Zishuan pointed at the people who were tied up behind him and said to the soldier, "Yes, Marquis." The soldier shouted. Immediately, more than a dozen Yamen runners ran out to help. A moment later, all the criminals were brought in. After everything was done, the soldier saw that Li Zishuan still had no intention of leaving. He could not help but feel puzzled. However, Li Zishuan's next sentence scared him out of his wits. This Marquis Li Zishuan incited the people to riot in a fit of anger. This crime is unforgivable. I surrender myself to the Supreme Court and ask the Supreme Court to take me into custody. This Marquis will wait in the prison for the Emperor's judgment. Chapter 1107. Under Li Zishuan's strong request, the Supreme Court soldiers could only fearfully invite Li Zishuan to the cleanest prison cell in the Supreme Court. The blanket was changed to the newest one, and they even brought over a table, a few copies of the Tang Daily, and some teapots and wine cups. It could be said that all the conveniences they could provide were provided. Li Zishuan's prison cell just happened to be the prison cell that he sent in today. Seeing that Li Zishuan's prison cell was as comfortable as an inn, the group of people's eyes turned red with envy. But they also knew that they would not receive such treatment, so they could only sit on the floor and wait for the Supreme Court's judgment. Other than this new blanket, take away the rest. This Marquis is here to go to prison, not to stay in an inn. This Marquis appreciates the intentions of these few little brothers. What was surprising was that Li Zishuan actually rejected the special treatment given by the officials and requested for the Supreme Court's officials to take away all the things. As for leaving the new blanket behind, it was really because he could not stand the dirty and hard blanket from before. But then again, as a big brother, it was reasonable for him to ask for a new blanket, right? Marquis, you are still innocent. You don't have to torture yourself like this, right? The soldier had a difficult expression on his face. They knew that Li Zishuan was a good official who wholeheartedly served the people. Otherwise, they would not spend so much effort. I've already made up my mind. There is no need to persuade me anymore. Just do as I say, and then go to your own things. Li Zishuan waved his hand and said. He did this not to put on a show, nor was it purposely pretentious. It was because the current era that he was in required him to do so. This time, although he had used the power of thunder and successfully pushed the Chui family into a state of eternal damnation, but the method he used was somewhat taboo, because he had used the public's will. In this era where the imperial power was greater than the heavens, you, as an official, actually dared to use the public's will to force the emperor to do something he did not want to do. Today you forced the emperor to deal with the Chui family. Then tomorrow you would use the public's will to force the emperor to abdicate the throne. In the era of imperial power, whether the emperor's mind was big or small, he would not like such an official. The big-minded ones might tolerate you for a period of time, but the small-minded ones would directly kill you, a potential threat. Therefore, Li Zishuan didn't have anything else to do today. Instead, he took the initiative to turn himself in. He had to show this attitude. Now, he was still in charge of his family. Even if he didn't think for himself, he had to think for his family, right? Seeing Li Zishuan's insistence, the soldier had no choice but to remove the things from the prison cell. Li Zishuan sat cross-legged on the couch and closed his eyes in deep thought. After an unknown period of time, a series of footsteps suddenly came from outside the prison cell. Li Zishuan opened his eyes and saw a middle-aged man wearing a dark red official's robe with a dark blue belt around his waist walking over with a few soldiers. The man had a head full of black hair, a pair of indifferent tiger eyes, and a straight figure. He could be considered to have a dignified appearance. This official, Dai Zhou, greets the Marquis of Yong'an. The middle-aged official asks someone to open the cell. Then, he cupped his hands and bowed to Li Zishuan, who was sitting cross-legged on the bed. Although he was older than Li Zishuan, his official position was lower than Li Zishuan's. Since he was in the officialdom, he should follow the rules of the officialdom. So it's Dai Xiaoqing. Nice to meet you. Li Zishuan stood up and cupped his hands in return. This Marquis's body is guilty. Dai Xiaoqing shouldn't be so courteous. Dai Zhou shook his head. Whether Marquis is guilty or not, His Majesty has yet to make a conclusion. But just based on the fact that Marquis is willing to seek justice for a maid he doesn't even know, this Dai Zhou still admires Marquis. This Dai Zhou dared to say anything. Now, the officials in the imperial court who had some brains basically knew that the confession letter was related to Li Zishuan. But Li Zishuan's methods were obviously taboo. Under such circumstances, Dai Zhou still dared to publicly praise him. If it fell into the ears of someone with ulterior motives, it might become a weakness. Dai Xiaoqing must be joking. This Marquis is young and impetuous. I don't know the severity of the matter. Fortunately, this Marquis didn't cause any big trouble. Otherwise, I'm afraid my conscience will not be at ease for the rest of my life. Li Zishuan shook his head and sighed with emotion. Then he asked, May I ask Dai Xiaoqing how His Majesty dealt with the Cui family in the morning court today? Dai Zhou replied expressionlessly, Madame Wang killed people. Although she had committed suicide, her behavior was so vile that it angered people and gods alike. His Majesty ordered the Cui family to bury Madame Wang's body in the wilderness. They are not allowed to enter the Cui family's ancestral mausoleum, and they are not allowed to look for a place with good feng shui for her. East County Duke Cui Junchuo didn't manage his family well. He allowed his family to embezzle the land of the common people and allowed his family members to kidnap women. His Majesty decreed that he was stripped of his title of East County Duke and sent back to Zhengzhou. He was ordered to return all the land that he had embezzled in the past 10 years to the common people within a month. Those who kidnapped women must also be handed over to the local government within a month. In addition, His Majesty sent the left Prime Minister Wei Zheng to Hunan Province to thoroughly investigate all the officials who have covered up or colluded with the Cui family in Zhengzhou in recent years. He wanted to clean up the local government and return the common people to the common people. Hearing this, Li Zishuan was relieved. Old Li was finally willing to completely deal with the Cui family. His plan was not in vain. Moreover, sending Wei Zheng to Hunan Province was the most ruthless move. Didn't your Cui family get wind and reign in Hunan Province in the past? Wasn't it all because the local government took care of you? Now I will remove those officials who took care of you. Let's see how you can continue to be lawless in Hunan Province. His Majesty is wise. In this way, Miss Nianyu can finally rest in peace. Li Zishuan murmured, Marquis, I have something to say, but I don't know if it's appropriate. Dai Zhou hesitated for a moment and asked. Li Zishuan's first impression of Dai Zhou was not bad. Hearing this, he smiled slightly and said, Vice Minister Dai, please. Dai Zhou waved his hand and dismissed his attendants. Then he looked at Li Zishuan with shining eyes and said, I believe that with Marquis's wisdom, he must have known that this method would hurt the enemy 1,000 times and hurt 800 times. But why did Marquis still use this method? Just for an unknown little maid? Is it really worth it? Li Zishuan was silent. After a moment of silence, he said, Some things can't be measured only by whether it's worth it or not. Since I encountered this matter, I must take care of it. If I don't do anything, I will feel guilty for the rest of my life. And in my opinion, conscience and justice are not silent. They know it's impossible and do it. The Cui family is powerful and seemingly invincible. But the sword of justice is not forged for the strong, it is for the weak. If I don't stand up today, there will be more wronged souls in the netherworld. I will never regret what I did today. Chapter 1108. The news of Li Zishuan being imprisoned in the Supreme Court quickly reached the palace in Li Er's ears. Oomph. Who is he putting on an act for? Let's ignore him and see what tricks he has up his sleeves. Li Er's gaze was as cold as ice. After listening to Zhao Song's report, he paced back and forth in the main hall in frustration. His hands behind his back were clenched into fists and then completely unclenched in the next moment. He would never have thought that the high and mighty Chui family would collapse before the imperial power could even show its might. He did not feel the joy of getting rid of the aristocratic family. Instead, he felt some fear because the power Li Zishuan could mobilize was too terrifying. It was so terrifying that it could even threaten his imperial power. Kill, or not kill. At this moment, Li Er's mind was filled with all sorts of thoughts. In the end, he waved his hand and said angrily, "Yes." Zhao Song sighed in his heart and cupped his hands in acknowledgement. Li Zishuan disregarded his own glory and got rid of evil for the people. Zhao Song admired him from the bottom of his heart. However, in the end, he ended up in prison. Zhao Song was both regretful and vexed. Vexed that Li Zishuan was so foolish. Yongle Lane, Li Mansion. Mother, why isn't brother back yet? Lanner is hungry. The whole family was waiting for Li Zishuan to return for lunch. However, after waiting for a long time, he was still nowhere to be seen. Lanner could not help but rub her stomach and said pitifully, "Soon. You should be back soon." Mrs. Li had been feeling uneasy since the morning. When she saw that Li Zishuan hadn't returned yet, the ominous premonition in her heart grew even stronger. She patted Lan Er's little head and called out, "San Bao, didn't you say 4 hours ago that the Chui family's turmoil had ended? Why isn't Xian back yet?" San Bao said anxiously, "Madam, the Chui family's turmoil had ended 4 hours ago. However, the young master took a group of people to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is far away from Dunhua Square. The young master is probably still there." Madam Li nodded, but the ominous feeling in her heart did not dissipate. "Father, mother, not good. I found a letter left behind by my husband in the room." At this moment, Han Yushi hurriedly ran in with a letter in her hand and said anxiously, "Yushi, what happened to Xian Er? What does he mean by leaving a letter?" Mrs. Li immediately panicked. She subconsciously thought that something had happened to Li Zishuan. Li Jingma had always been calm. He patted his wife's hand and said, "Yushi, what did the letter say?" Han Yushi looked around and said softly, "San Bao, little he, you all go down first." It wasn't that she didn't trust the servants in the residence, but the fewer people who knew about this, the better. Yes, young madam. Although San Bao and the rest wanted to know what had happened, they had to listen to their mistress. After all the servants in the hall left, Han Yushi said, "Father, mother, grandfather, grandmother, my husband said in his letter that he will go to the Supreme Court to reflect on himself for a few days. As long as we don't think about it, and don't tell anyone about it, he will be back in less than 10 days. Reflect on himself for a few days? Why would Xian go to the Supreme Court to reflect on himself? Old master, did something happen to Xian? To ordinary people, the Supreme Court wasn't a good place to go. After all, most people didn't want to be involved in a lawsuit. Therefore, Mrs. Li was at a loss after hearing this. Sigh. In the end, it's a loss of 800 to hurt the enemy. Yi Guozhong was old and experienced. How could he not understand the meaning behind this letter? He sighed heavily and said to Mrs. Li, "Yuzhu, you and Jingma don't have to worry. Although Xian destroyed the Chui family, the hidden danger is also quite big. Now that he has tied himself up in the Supreme Court, retreating in order to advance, he might be able to resolve the danger for himself. We can only do as he says. Don't think about it, and don't tell anyone about it. This is the only way to help him." Li Jingma understood immediately. Although he was worried about his son, he couldn't say it out loud. He could only force himself to calm down and comfort her. "That's right. Don't worry, madam. Xian has always been very confident. If he says nothing will happen, nothing will happen. We'll just do as he says in the letter. Let's eat." Li Zishuan quietly lived in the Supreme Court. Of course, there were very few people who knew about it. His family didn't say anything. The officials who knew that he was in prison were basically the big shots in the court. Naturally, they wouldn't be so bored as to spread rumors. The collapse of the Chui family made the common people unable to adapt for a while. Of course, this matter also became the most talked about matter in the first year of Jingguan. It could also be said that it was the biggest news in the first year of Jingguan. 3 days had passed, but the enthusiasm of the commoners and their discussions about the Chui family had not diminished in the slightest. The commoners who had participated in the Chui family operation had been bragging to the people around them for the past 3 days, but they still enjoyed it. After all, they were the awesome people who had defeated the Chui family, a 1,000-year-old family. Of course, in these 3 days, the common people didn't know that Li Zishuan had been locked up in the Supreme Court's prison. The students of Yanwang College also didn't know. The upper echelons of the Tang Dynasty, without exception, chose to deal with this matter coldly. They chose the 3 no's policy: don't talk, don't ask, and don't say anything. The people of the Li family firmly followed Li Zishuan's 3 no's policy: don't think, and don't say anything. As a result, it was naturally difficult for others to know that Li Zishuan was in prison. However, it didn't mean that everyone didn't know. "Father, is our Yamacho locked up in the Supreme Court by you?" That night, son Ziffin returned home and found his father. He asked angrily, "What's wrong with you?" When the students of Yanhuang College participated in the warm winter operation, in principle, the students who lived close to the school could go home at night. Sun Fujiao raised his eyebrows and said in a deep voice, "Fanner, where did you hear this news from?" Asking this meant that Sun Fujiao tacitly agreed that Li Zishuan was in the Supreme Court. Sun Ziffin couldn't help but open his eyes wide and said, "It can't be. Father? You guys really locked up Yamacho?" "No, Yamacho is such a good person. Why do you guys want to lock him up?" Sun Fujian knew that he had misspoken and scolded with a straight face. "You're just a child, so don't interfere in this matter. It's because the Marquis of Yong and is too good a person that he has to stay in the Supreme Court's prison for the next few days. This is to help him get rid of a disaster. If you really want what's good for your Yamacho, then keep this secret for this old man. If this is made public, only death awaits your Yamacho. Do you understand?" Chapter 1109. An entire night had passed, but Sun Ziffin's mind was still replaying the words his father said to him last night. He did not understand why good people had to go to jail if they were too good. He did not understand why he could not spread the news that Li Zishuan was in jail and get more people to help. He also did not understand why Sun Fujia refused his request to visit the prison. He didn't sleep much the entire night because the person he respected and admired the most was still locked up in prison. He felt very uncomfortable. "Chinke, you're right. The mountain elder was really locked up in the prison." Sigh. In the morning, Sun Ziffin did not eat breakfast at home and went straight to the Warm Tang Foundation. The students had just come from Yinshan and were eating breakfast there. He, Li Tai, and Li Ku squatted under a tree and ate steam buns while speaking gloomily. "Don't worry. Yamacho will definitely be fine. My father will not do anything to Yamacho." Li Tai patted Sun Zifan's shoulder and said while chewing something in his mouth. Obviously, Sun Ziffin had heard the news about Li Zishuan from him. "But I don't understand. Why did my father tell me?" Sun Ziffin hesitated for a while and finally asked the question in his heart. After he finished speaking, Li Tai and Li Ku were silent for a while. In the end, Li Ku said, "Ziffin, your father is right. At this time, the fewer people who know that Yamacho is in jail, the better." "Why?" Li Ku paused for a moment and said, "Because with Yamacho's reputation among the people, if the people know about this, they might cause a huge commotion. At that time, Yamacho will become a treacherous official who forced the emperor to abdicate and will never be able to rise again." Sun Ziffin could not help but be stunned. He was not stupid and quickly understood the crux of the matter. Then, a layer of cold sweat suddenly appeared on his back. He finally understood the seriousness of the matter and that his father did not lie to him last night. The fewer people who knew about Li Zishuan's situation, the better. Gulp. Sun Ziffin nervously swallowed a mouthful of saliva and said in a low but serious voice, Chinke, little Ku, we have to think of a way to help Yamacho hide this matter. In the future, if the students ask where Yamacho is, we will say that Yamacho is in seclusion writing books. Yes, writing books in seclusion. What do you think? Litaya nodded and said, let's say that. But in my opinion, Yamacho will not stay in the Supreme Court for long. He will definitely be out in a few days. Sun Ziffin sighed worriedly. I hope so. Zhao Si, are you sure you want to go that way? I'm not sure. Marquis, please allow me to think about it. You wish. As the saying goes, do not regret your moves. With your chess skills, how can you play chess? In the Supreme Court's prison, Li Zexuan and a soldier sat opposite each other. There was a chessboard on the stone table between them, and they were playing chess. In the past few days, Li Zexuan had been either playing chess with others or writing books. Coincidentally, the reason that Sun Ziffin had used to fool people had actually come true. Li Zexuan was really in seclusion writing books. He was writing the Academy's teaching materials for next year. However, his seclusion was too unprofessional. Who would find someone to play chess with during seclusion? At this moment, the officer named Zhao Si opposite Li Zexuan looked like he was about to cry. He thought to himself, since you don't want me to regret my move, why did you ask before? Smack! Haha, I checkmate you. Li Zexuan's single carriage directly attacked the root of the problem, checkmating Zhao Si. Checkmate again? Zhao Si scratched his head, looking depressed. He stared at the chessboard without blinking, thinking of a way to break the game. Li Zexuan saw this and laughed. Haha, no need to look anymore. You have nowhere to go. Give me the money. Zhao Si looked at it again, unwilling to give up. In the end, he still couldn't see a way out. He could only take out a copper coin from his pocket and put it in Li Zexuan's hand. Unconvinced, he said, Again, this time I'm so close. Next time, I'll definitely beat Marquis. 1 copper coin per game. Oh no, to be precise, if Zhao Si lost, he would give Li Zexuan 1 copper coin. If Li Zexuan lost, he would give Zhao Si 100 copper coins. In order to attract people to play chess with him, Li Zexuan set up a bet where one put in twice the effort and 100 times the return. In the past few days, he had actually won a few dozen copper coins. He was truly a heartless abuser. In his previous life, Li Zexuan was not a chess expert. It was mainly due to the influence of the elders in his village that he started playing chess when he was young. Later on, when he grew up, he knew how to use the computer. He also often went to Penguin Games to abuse or be abused by experts. Occasionally, he would study a few endgames online. To modern professional chess players, he was very noob. However, to the people of the Tang Dynasty who had not experienced the information explosion era, he could already be called an expert. At least, it was not much of a problem for him to completely abuse the people in the Supreme Court prison. Scram, brat, you only have that little bit of skill, and you still have the nerve to show it off? Let me do it. Just at this moment, Daizhou silently arrived behind Zhao Si and fiercely kicked Zhao Si's, but as he said, this prison cell was very special. It was not locked, so Daizhou was able to silently walk in. Hey, this subordinate greets Dai Xiaoqing. Dai Xiaoqing, please. Zhao Si rolled and crawled up from the ground. Not only was he not angry, he even smiled cheekily at Daizhou. If this was in a modern world, he would definitely be a bootlicker. Marquis Yong, and how about this Dai, play a few games with you? Daizhou smiled. Li Zexuan had a good impression of Daizhou. This was a rigid but humorous person. Thus, he smiled and said, since Dai Xiaoqing is in the mood, how about we play a few games? Daizhou smiled even more happily. He did not clean up the chessboard, but said, then this bet, I wonder if you can raise it by 10 times? And Li Zexuan was stunned. He could not help but laugh. Ha ha. Looks like Dai Xiaoqing wants to earn money from this marquis. But this game has not even started yet, and Dai Xiaoqing is so confident that he can win. Daizhou waved his hand. So what if I can't win? It's just 10 coins for a game. But if I win, this Dai could get 1,000 coins. This kind of deal is worth it. This Dai does not believe that I can't win 1 out of 100 games. This fellow did not hide his intention to earn some extra money from Lisa Xuan. Hearing this, Lisa Xuan felt both angry and amused. 100 games is definitely not enough. This marquis will play 3 games with Dai Xiaoqing. Lisa Xuan smiled slightly. If he remembered correctly, Dai Zhou was a good official and an honest one. If this person really had the ability, Lisa Xuan didn't mind losing some money to Dai Zhou to supplement his family. But if he really was a noob, then Lisa Xuan wouldn't purposely go easy on him. Chapter 1110. In the Supreme Court's prison cell. The most popular Marquis Yong and was actually playing chess with the Supreme Court's newly promoted vice minister. They were even gambling. If news of this got out, it would probably shock everyone to the core. Dai Zhou sat opposite Lisa Xuan. At this time, he had already put away his smile. After a moment of deep thought, he started with a move, horse 2 into 3. Lisa Xuan was naturally not to be outdone. His counterattack was a pawn 2 into 5. Generally speaking, the openings of Chinese chess were similar. They could be divided into 2 types, the defensive type and the offensive type. For example, Dai Zhou's opening was, in a strict sense, a cautious defensive type, while Lisa Xuan belonged to the aggressive offensive type. Lisa Xuan relied on some of the combinations he learned from the internet in his previous life. In the early stages of the game, he slaughtered his opponents. On the other hand, although Dai Zhou lost a lot of pieces, he was not anxious at all. He continued to follow his own train of thought and slowly deployed his own defensive circle. The two of them moved to the middle of the game and gradually entangled with each other. In this kind of entanglement, the side with the sharper attack should have a greater advantage. However, from the current situation, it seemed that Lisa Xuan was gradually at a disadvantage. Lisa Xuan could not help but frown. He had underestimated Dai Zhou's ability. In terms of chess style, Lisa Xuan's chess style was extremely bold and fierce. His footwork was wide, and it seemed like he wanted to fight to the death. He often liked to pursue thrilling situations in his games. From the standpoint of a bystander, watching his games was the most satisfying. To sum up his style of chess in one sentence, it could be called infinite scenery at the perilous peak. On the other hand, Dai Zhou's chess style was steady and his footwork was solid. Under his moves, the originally disadvantaged chess game was revived by him. Not only that, as the game progressed, he made the changes in the board very complicated. It was as if he had set up a Dragon's Gate formation. It was both real and fake, and it confused Lisa Xuan many times. Time and time again, he set up ambushes to lure the enemy deep. Dai Zhou quickly killed Lisa Xuan's carriage and horse. The scales of victory were slowly tilting towards his side. Gulp! Zhao Xi's eyes almost popped out of their sockets as he watched from the side. Such an exciting game made him feel like he was watching 2 peerless experts exchange blows. The flashes of swords, the neighing of horses, it was very intense. Only then did he realize that Lisa Xuan hadn't used his full strength when they were playing chess. Thank you for letting me win. Marquis, you have lost the first round. Under Dai Zhou's careful planning, all the advantages that Lisa Xuan had gained in the beginning were finally wiped out. Moreover, in the process, Lisa Xuan suffered heavy losses. After the final battle, all the escape routes of Lisa Xuan's commander were blocked by Dai Zhou. Finally, Dai Zhou raised his head and chuckled. He was as happy as a child in his 30s. One is a vice minister of the Supreme Court, while the other is a marquis of the current dynasty. Yet, they are actually gambling and playing chess in this prison. If news of this were spread, would you feel honored? Or would I feel honored? Unknowingly, Li Er was standing outside the prison cell with his hands behind his back. It seemed that he had been standing there for a long time. Beside him was Zhao Song, who was gasping for cold air. His forehead was sweating in the middle of winter. The 3 unlucky fellows in the prison cell quickly came over to greet him. Li Er directly said to Dai Zhou, "Minister Dai, you are in such a good mood. You can leave first. I will look for you later." Daizhou's forehead was full of sweat. He thought to himself that today was really an unlucky day. In his own territory, playing chess to earn some extra money, he actually met Lier. How unlucky! Most importantly, he was about to get the 1,000 copper coins when Li Zishuan came. How should he ask Li Zishuan for money later? Yes, Your Majesty. Daizhou was thinking about how to get the 1,000 copper coins back. He saluted Lier and left with Zhao Si. At the same time, to prevent the other prisoners from affecting Lier and Li Zishuan's conversation, he also ordered the prison guards to transfer all the prisoners in the nearby prison cells away. I heard that you were reflecting on yourself here. But now, it seems that you are living quite well here. Lier stood in front of Li Zishuan and said expressionlessly. Li Zishuan smiled helplessly and sighed. 3 feet of land without any sunlight. I am just trying to find joy in hardship. Lier's gaze froze and said, Are you blaming me? No. Then, do you feel wronged? Lier's face was expressionless as he spoke again. Also no. Li Zishuan shook his head and said in a low voice, Eating from the monarch and sharing the monarch's burdens is the duty of a subject. But what I did this time, not only did I not share your Majesty's burdens, but I also added trouble to your Majesty. If it was in any other dynasty, my head would have already left my body. How could I still have a place to play chess and write books like now? So, I do not blame anyone, nor do I feel wronged. Instead, I am filled with gratitude. Hearing this, the depression in Lier's heart dissipated a little. With his hands behind his back, he paced around the cell and said, Do you know that in these 3 days, the Empress has come to find me 3 times, Chang'e has come to find me 5 times, and Chengxian has come to find me 3 times. They were all speaking on your behalf. In the end, if I did not let you go, I would become a fatuous monarch in their eyes. Li Zishuan was moved. He hurriedly said, I am grateful for the friendship of the Empress, the Crown Prince, and the Princess. But entering the prison to reflect on myself was my own choice. I feel very uneasy for causing trouble for your Majesty. If I had known that you were such a troublemaker, I would not have placed you in the imperial court. Lier shook his head and scolded unhappily. Then, he did not speak again. At this time, he noticed a thick stack of manuscripts on the bed and asked casually, What are these? Li Zishuan cupped his hands and answered, Your Majesty, these are the teaching materials of the academy for next year. I happen to have nothing to do in the prison, so I settled down to write books. So many? You wrote all of them in the past few days? Lier's face was suddenly shocked. This was because even if 3 scholars worked together to compile this thick stack of manuscripts, they would not be able to write so much in 3 days. Subconsciously, he went forward and flipped through it to see if the contents were scribbled by Li Zishuan to make up the numbers. But when he opened it, the word awkward was written on old Li's face. This was because he had flipped through some of the contents in the 2nd volume of chemistry. He could not understand the equations in it at all. Ahem, I did not expect you to be so concerned about your academy. Even in prison, you did not forget to compile teaching materials. In order to hide the embarrassment on his face, Lier hurriedly coughed and said, Chapter 1111. Your Majesty, what do you mean by my academy? That's your academy. You're the dean of the academy. I'm just a gardener, using the academy to realize my dreams. The one who really uses it is your Majesty, and the one who benefits is Tang Empire. When these seedlings of Yin Huang College grow up, they will definitely hold up the vast blue sky for Tang Empire. In the Supreme Court's prison, Li Zishuan cupped his hands and said to Lier, he had no choice. Being born in such a feudal society, if he wanted to develop the academy well, he had to hug the thigh of the royal family. Li Zishuan didn't want to rebel against Lier. This boss was too strong, and he couldn't do anything. Whoever didn't want to do it, he wouldn't do it anyway. Even in the modern world, if you want to do well, don't you need to hug the thigh of others? Lier's gaze was deep. He was satisfied with Li Zishuan's attitude. Although it happened a few days ago, made him angry, Li Zishuan still knew when to advance and retreat most of the time. Brat, if you had always been so sensible, How could you have fallen to the point of being imprisoned? If it weren't for the fact that the Empress and Changle were pleading for you, I would have beheaded you long ago. Lier said resentfully. Lisa Schwan said with a smile, Your Majesty is magnanimous and wise. Naturally, it's not something that ordinary people can compare to. I believe that under Your Majesty's leadership, Tang Empire will definitely be able to catch up with the era of Qin Huang and Han Wu. Since Old Li was willing to come to the prison, it meant that he had no intention of killing Lisa Schwan. He was only here to find a way out. For the sake of his family, Lisa Schwan was willing to give Old Li a way out. Besides, he wasn't bragging. The golden age of Zhenguan in history was indeed catching up with the era of Qin Huang and Han Wu. Now that he, a transmigrator, joined, Tang Empire would only be stronger. When did you learn how to flatter? If Wei Xuanqing was here, he would definitely accuse you of flattering the emperor. Lier pointed at Lisa Schwan and said unhappily. However, the slight smile at the corner of his mouth showed that he did not reject this kind of flattery. Brat, your intelligence is outstanding. In all of the Great Tang, there's probably no one who can compare to you. But why was he so muddle-headed this time? I've repeatedly ordered you not to touch the Cui family, but you've caused me such a big mess in one night. You can't even bear it for a year or two. After rambling for a long time, Lisa Schwan finally got to the point. Lisa Schwan could not help but heave a sigh of relief. Anyone who had quarreled with friends before would know that under normal circumstances, if the other party didn't even pay attention to you after a quarrel or kept talking about other things, it meant that the other party was really angry. However, if the other party was willing to talk to you about the source of the quarrel, it meant that the other party wanted to resolve the conflict and eliminate the differences between them. Your Majesty, you have the world at heart, so of course you have to consider the big picture. However, I don't have to think so much every time. The Cui family is heartless and has killed so many people. Since I've seen it, I can't stand it anymore. Otherwise, I'll definitely dream of the cries of the ghosts in hell. I know that I've let my emotions affect my decisions, but if I were given another chance, I would still do the same. Even if I'm punished by Your Majesty, I won't regret it. Lier fell silent. For some reason, he suddenly recalled what Emperor Zhongsun had said to him last night. Your Majesty, the Marquis of Yong, and inciting the anger of the people to destroy the Cui family, was indeed a little impulsive. However, I don't believe that with the Marquis of Yong's intelligence, he wouldn't have not thought of the severe consequences. However, he still did in the end. This shows that he dares to love and hates evil. He isn't an ambitious and scheming person. Thus, I believe that Your Majesty's worries are unnecessary. The Great Tang needs a righteous hero like the Marquis of Yong, and Your Majesty also needs a loyal and capable official like the Marquis of Yong, and, moreover, the Marquis of Yong's own initiative to bind himself to the Court of Judicial Review was for Your Majesty's sake. He knew that with his current reputation among the people, if Your Majesty were to punish him, Your Majesty's reputation among the people would definitely be affected. With such a straightforward official, I don't wish for Your Majesty to make the wrong decision because of some groundless suspicions. I implore Your Majesty to reconsider. After a long silence, Lier finally recovered from his contemplation. He inwardly breathed a sigh of relief, but at the same time, he also felt an inexplicable sense of loss. He looked at Lisa Schwan with a complicated gaze and said, The Cui family is truly abominable, but you, a brat, inciting the people to riot is also unforgivable. If not for the imperial court doing its best to clean up your mess, Chang and would have been thrown into chaos in the next few days. Seeing that you were able to reflect on your actions in the last few days, we will punish you with 2 months of seclusion. While you're at it, you have to submit a letter of self-reflection within 3 days. Hearing the light punishment of 2 months of seclusion, Lisa Schwan couldn't help but rejoice, thinking that Old Li was finally willing to let this matter pass. However, when he heard the letter of self-reflection, Lisa Schwan's eyes widened and his forehead was covered in black lines. What's wrong? You're not willing to write. That's fine too. Lier glared at Li Zixuan and was about to say something, but Li Zixuan quickly interrupted and said, "No, no, no. Your Majesty, I'm willing to write. I'm very willing to write." In his heart, he was silently criticizing old Li Zixuan for forcing his son, Li Tai, to write a letter of self-reflection. Oomph. Lier snorted and finally dropped the subject. After a pause, he sighed deeply and said, "Obtaining the world has the Tao. Obtaining the people is the same as obtaining the world. Obtaining the people's Tao and obtaining their hearts is the same as obtaining the people." The collapse of the Chui family overnight can be considered as a wake-up call for me. Li Zixuan secretly nodded. Lier was indeed Lier. After realizing the power of the people, the first thing he thought of was not to suppress them, but to obtain their hearts and use them for himself. What a bold spirit! Your Majesty, as the saying goes, a ruler is a boat, a commoner is water. Water can carry a boat, but it can also capsize a boat. The Chui family thought that the people were weak and powerless, so they wantonly oppressed the people and harmed the servants. They had no respect for the people and finally died in a vast ocean of the people. Your Majesty is diligent and loves the people. You are wise and mighty and will definitely be supported by the people. The big boat of Tang Dynasty will also be carried by the people and will never sink. Li Zixuan clasped his hands and said with emotion. He could only say sorry for unintentionally stealing someone's famous words. Lier's eyes lit up and said, "Water can carry a boat, but it can also capsize a boat." "Huh, well said, well said." Hearing this, my trip today was not in vain. Lier, who had a clear mind, laughed and walked out of the prison. The power of the people united was indeed great, but as long as the people became the water that carried the boat, what was there to fear? Chapter 11:12. Many people subconsciously thought that it was Lier's famous saying, "Water can carry a boat, but it can also capsize a boat." Actually, it was not. This sentence first came from a chapter of Sun Tzu, Duke Ai. It was Sun Tzu narrating a conversation between Confucius and Duke Ai of Lu. At that time, Confucius said, "Qiu Wenji, a ruler is a boat, a commoner is a river. Water can carry a boat, but water can also capsize a boat. If a ruler thinks of danger, how can danger not come?" In the 17th year of Jingguan, Wei Zheng wrote in 10 Thoughts of Admonishing Taizong, "Resentment is not great, but can be feared by people. Water can carry a boat, but it can also capsize a boat." Wei Zheng also said this. Lier often used this saying to warn people. After a long time, it became Lier's famous saying exclamation point. "Ha! Dai Xiaoqing, thank you for taking care of me these past few days." After Lier left, Li Zixuan patted his butt and also left. If he did not leave, was he going to stay here to celebrate the new year? Under Zhao Xi's lead, he left the prison cell. However, he met Dai Zhou outside the prison. He cupped his hands and smiled. When Dai Zhou saw Li Zixuan come out from inside, he did not look surprised at all. Obviously, he had already guessed that this would be the result. "Marquis, you're too polite. I won't tell Marquis to come again when you're free." It was rare that Dai Zhou actually knew how to joke. Li Zixuan laughed loudly 3 times before taking his leave. Zhao Xi reluctantly watched Li Zixuan leave. In his heart, he felt that it was a pity that there would no longer be the kind of gamble where one investment 100 times the return. However, Dai Zhou's next sentence made his eyeballs fall to the ground. Li Zixuan also almost fell to the ground. "Hey, Marquis, you still haven't paid the previous 1,000 coins. Yongle Lane, Li Mansion." In the past, this place was filled with laughter, warmth, and harmony. However, recently, this place suddenly became silent. The mischievous Lawner no longer went to play with her friends. She only leaned on the big stone lion outside the mansion and looked at the end of the lane, hoping that someone would come back soon. Although Madame Li was very worried, she could not show in front of Yi Guochong and old Madame Yi. She could only force a smile. Han Yushi usually appeared to be very strong on the surface, But only Xiao He and Xiao Shi knew that every night there would always be faint sobbing sounds coming from the bedroom. Although Li Jingma looked calm on the surface, he kept thinking about his son in his heart. He was very irritated. The servants of the Li residence felt the heavy atmosphere and worked even harder. Although they were wondering why Li Zishuan hadn't been home for the past few days, no one dared to ask. They could only pray in their hearts that their young master would be safe and sound, because Li Lier and Li is Lier, Li Er Shi. They were bound together for good or ill. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. This was the 4th day since Lan'er leaned on the stone lion and waited for Li Zishuan to come back. The stone lion was very cold in winter. However, the little girl was wearing layers of cotton clothes. She was like a stupid penguin. She did not feel cold leaning on the stone lion. Instead, she could relieve the tiredness of her feet. Lan'er, who had been disappointed for 3 days, did not have much hope today. She stared at the lane for a while. When she still did not see Li Zishuan, she pouted and looked up gloomily to read the magpies in the book. Magpies were resident birds in China. They would not move to the south to survive the winter. During the winter, they would often feed on a large number of animal carcasses. Sometimes, they would even tail the predators and pick up the leftovers. Today, on the ginkgo tree in front of the Li residence, there were 4 to 5 magpies chirping noisily. At Lan'er's age, she was at the age where she liked to play. She watched the magpies frolicking for a while and couldn't help but be engrossed in it. She didn't even notice that someone had walked past her. Hee, it's so cold. Lan'er, why aren't you in the house enjoying the heater? What are you doing out here? A familiar voice, a familiar loving tone. Lan'er was stunned. She looked in front and saw Li Zishuan standing in front of her with a smile. Surprise, excitement, grievance. Wow, brother, you're back. Sob sob. Brother, you're finally back. Lan'er missed you so much. Lan'er rushed forward and hugged Li Zishuan tightly. She pressed her face against the latter's stomach, laughing and crying at the same time. Yo, isn't this the Duke of Yong'an? I haven't seen him for a few days. Yeah, it seems that ever since the Chui family fell, the Duke of Yong, and has not appeared in Yongla Lane. Maybe the Duke of Yong, and went to do something else. A few people in Yongla Lane happened to pass by. When they saw Li Zishuan, they could not help but be surprised. They discussed in private. Seeing this, Li Zishuan quickly patted Lan'er's little head and said, Hee hee, brother misses Lan'er too. Let's go. Let's talk a home. Ugh. Brother, how many days has it been since you last bathed? You stink. Lan'er suddenly covered her nose and screamed as she retreated far away. Li Zishuan's face darkened. He almost vomited blood. When he entered the residence, his father, mother, maternal grandfather, maternal grandmother, and his own daughter-in-law naturally came forward to express their condolences one by one. Even Yi Fashion, a taciturn person, came forward to say, Cousin is fine now. This child had been helping out at the Tang Foundation for a while. Later, when Li Chengxian sent some people from the Eastern Palace over, Yi Fashion saw that there was no shortage of manpower and returned. Hee hee, today is a joyous occasion. Wang Zhong, tell the kitchen to prepare a big banquet. Everyone in the residence will have good meat and good wine at noon. The simplest way to express happiness was to share it with others. Li Jingma ordered simply. Yes, old master. Wang Zhong relayed the news with a smile. Instantly, the servants were all jubilant, not only because there was good wine and good meat, but more importantly because their backbone had returned. That joyous and warmly residence had also returned. The news that Li Zishuan had personally come to the Supreme Court's prison and pardoned Li Zishuan quickly spread through the upper circles of Chang'an. This time, when Li Zishuan had voluntarily gone to prison, everyone in the imperial court had remained silent. This was because the problem of the people's hearts was too big. If it was not handled properly, it would bring trouble to oneself. Those who wanted to impeach Li Zishuan saw that the 1,000-year-old families had fallen under Li Zishuan's feet, and a layer of sweat had formed on their backs. Who would dare to impeach Li Zishuan? Trollway was not afraid of Li Zishuan's revenge. However, Most of Li Zixuan's actions were commendable. He even secretly supported Li Zixuan in his heart to get rid of the Cui family. Why would he impeach Li Zixuan? As for the officials close to Li Zixuan, they all knew that the more coldly this matter was handled, the better it would be for Li Zixuan. Therefore, they did not prematurely plead for leniency. However, after only 3 days, Li Zixuan had personally come to the prison cell and released Li Zixuan. This greatly exceeded everyone's expectations. At the same time, Li Zixuan's imperial favor had once again refreshed everyone's understanding of him. Chapter 11:13. At the Cheng estate, Cheng Yaojin, Yuqi Jingda, Qin Xiong, Li Jing, and Niu Jinda were all gathered around a stove to eat hot pot. Unlike Li Zixuan's home, where the stove was stuffed under a perforated table to cook hot pot, Cheng Yaojin felt that this seemed stingy, so he had someone place a large iron pot on the stove. The group of people gathered around the iron pot to eat, each person having a small table with cut vegetables and sauces on it. It could be said that it was both lively and warm to eat. I told you that this kid would be fine. Once His Majesty's anger subsides, he'll naturally be released. Halfway through the meal, Cheng Yaojin laughed heartily as they talked about Li Zixuan. I wonder who was it a few days ago who was like an ant that had stirred up trouble, rushing to find His Majesty to reason with him. If second brother Qin hadn't held him back, who knows how many times His Majesty would have quarreled with him these past few days. Yuqi Jingda dipped his chopsticks into a large mouthful of mutton, dipped it in sauce, and happily ate a mouthful. He then took a sip of wine as he mocked. Speaking of which, right now, he was already infatuated with the way mutton was eaten. Recently, the servants in Yuchi Fu would often see their Lei Oi enter the kitchen, pung. Immediately after, they would see Yuqi Jingda carry out a plate of bright red mutton rolls. Only the heavens knew that the mighty Duke of Yi, the right martial marquis, great general, and a martial arts grandmaster expert would actually do the business of cutting vegetables. If people from other countries heard this, they would mistakenly think that the Great Tang lacked chefs. The Great Tang truly did lack chefs, martial arts grandmaster chefs, chefs with superb knife techniques. Old Black, shut up. We still haven't settled accounts with you for this matter. Since you knew in advance that little Xian was going to make a move on the Cui clan, why didn't you tell us old fellows? Do you think that our ranks aren't as high as yours and that we can't help you? Or do you think that our old arms and legs aren't as good as your martial arts? When Cheng Yaojin heard that, he slammed the table and exploded. They only realized after the fact that Yuqi Jingda had long predicted that Li Zixuan would move against the Cui family, and even helped Li Zixuan secretly add fuel to the fire. Otherwise, how could they explain the 300 crossbowmen and a large number of martial marquises lying in ambush at the right marquis mansion that night? Cheng Yaojin's words couldn't be said to not be poisonous. Yuqi Jingda's old face darkened even more. If he said something wrong, he would offend everyone in this room. Yuqi Jingda slapped the table and said angrily, "Madman Cheng, don't you dare slander this old man. Even if you knew in advance, what can you do to help little Xian?" The Cui family has a deep foundation, and it's impossible to defeat them with ordinary methods. Madman Cheng, if you knew about this in advance, it would only spoil the situation. Besides, this old man didn't expect Xiao Xian to take action so quickly. However, the reason why Xiao Xian was able to succeed this time was because he launched an attack on the Cui family at lightning speed. Otherwise, when His Majesty or the Cui family reacted, he wouldn't have another chance. Twisting words and forcing logic. Cheng Yaojin refused to accept this and wanted to continue arguing, but he was interrupted by Qin Xiong. Jingda's words are reasonable. Since the Cui family has been destroyed and Xiao Xian has been released from prison, there's no point in talking about these things. Eat hot pot. Eat hot pot. Second brother Qin is right. Eat hot pot. This thing tastes really good. Niu Jinda laughed loudly. Afternoon, Li Zixuan, who was reflecting on his mistakes behind closed doors at home, was waiting for Li Chengxian and Changle to arrive. The brother and sister pair came in a carriage, specially coming to visit Li Zishuan. Xiao Xian, why do I feel that the heating in your house is warmer than in the Eastern Palace? Li Chengxian asked in surprise as soon as he entered the house. The recent changes in Chang and city did not affect the progress of the heating in the palace at all. Now, the Eastern Palace, Lijiang Palace, Ganlu Palace, Changle Palace, and other places were all installed with heating. This thing could not be removed if one was used to it. Therefore, Li Chengxian had people install heating in Taiji Palace, which was the place where all the officials held morning court every day. This way, all the civil and military officials in the imperial court could enjoy the treatment of heating in their spare time. Li Zishuan smiled slightly and said, Hee, how can the size of this house compare to your Eastern Palace? Chengxian, if you want to be warm, you have to install at least 3 times the amount of heating in the Eastern Palace, right? The imperial palace buildings were much larger than ordinary houses in terms of length, width, and height. Under the same environment, if the palace wanted to be warm, it naturally had to install more heating. Li Chengxian patted his head and said in realization, Yes, that's true. Why go back today? I'll have the craftsman quickly modify it. Li Zishuan smiled and looked at Changle. He asked, Changle, when it's winter, the air outside is cold. You have qi disease, so it's best if you don't go out as much as possible. Also, you have to install more heating in your bedroom as much as possible. This can reduce the chances of you getting sick. Ever since Changle entered the house, her eyes could not move away from Li Zishuan. However, she was also afraid that Li Zishuan would notice her abnormal state. Therefore, she only occasionally looked at Li Zishuan so that no one could sense her thoughts. At this moment, when she heard Li Zishuan suddenly call her name, she was first shocked and then said, Thank you, Brother Xiao Xian, for your concern. However, Changle's palace has always been warm. Li Zishuan nodded. He suddenly thought of something and asked, Changle, have you been practicing the Taiji fist that Yushi taught you? Changle nodded crisply and said, Yes. Changle has been practicing, and I feel much better than last year. Brother Xiao Xian, do you want to see? Li Zishuan's forehead was full of black lines. Li Zishuan hurriedly shook his head and said, No. Changle, you've been practicing. Although this boxing technique may not be useful for your qi disease, it's still very beneficial for strengthening your body. What a joke. How many people could bear to see the princess of the Tang Empire practicing Taiji fist for you? Moreover, Li Chengxian was sitting next to her. Oh, Changle was slightly disappointed. She really felt that her Taiji fist was good and wanted to show it. However, with her special status, it was indeed inappropriate to show it in this kind of situation. Glancing at Li Zishuan's handsome face, Changle suddenly said, Brother Xiao Xian, next time don't quarrel with my father, okay? When you quarrel, Changle doesn't know who to help. Changle, don't talk nonsense. Li Chengxian hurriedly patted his sister's arm and said. Li Zishuan was startled and then said with a wry smile, Changle, people are born in this world. Sometimes they can't help themselves, and sometimes they can't help themselves. However, I'm still very grateful that you and Chengxian spoke up for me in front of His Majesty 2 days ago. Otherwise, how could I have gotten out of prison so quickly? Chapter 11:14. How could one not be attacked when one was in the pugilistic world? Where there were people, there would be pugilistic world. Where there was pugilistic world, there would naturally be conflicts. Li Zishuan didn't want to have a conflict with old Li, but many things couldn't be changed according to his subjective will. Inside the Li residence, hearing Li Zishuan's bitter laughter, Changle frowned. After thinking for a while, she said something that made one not know whether to laugh or cry. All right then, but Brother Xiao Xian, the next time you have a conflict with my father, remember to tell us in advance. That way, Brother Crown Prince and I can think of an excuse in advance and intercede for you in front of my father. Li Chengxian was speechless. Was his sister siding with her own family, or with someone else's family? Ahem. Changle, it's getting late. Let's go back. Otherwise, father and mother will be worried. He was determined not to stay here any longer. Otherwise, his sister might say something scary later. Although he wanted to stay and chat with Lisa Xuan, he felt that the way Changle looked at Lisa Xuan wasn't right. Brother Crown Prince, it's not even 5 p.m. yet. How is it too late? You haven't seen Brother Xiao Xian for so long. Don't you want to catch up with him? Changle looked at the sky and said unwillingly. Li Chengxian almost vomited blood. He thought to himself, "You're the one who wants to catch up? Okay, why do you have to drag me into it?" Although he thought so, he couldn't say it out loud. After all, in front of outsiders, he had to leave some face for his sister, right? Changle is right. I do have a lot of things to talk to Xiao Xian about. Then let's stay for another half an hour. Li Chengxian had no choice but to compromise. Li Zishuan couldn't help but feel happy. This scene was very similar to the scenes of people in internet cafes in his previous life. Manager, give machine number 5 another 2 hours. TSK. This scene was too beautiful. Changle looked at Li Zishuan gratefully. Then, she said to Li Zishuan, right? Brother Xiao Xian, the song Dedication of Love that was sung in Chang'an City last time was composed by you, right? Li Zishuan nodded and said, yes. It's me. Why? Changle's eyes were twinkling. Wow. Was it really composed by you? This song is so nice. The rhythm and lyrics were very different from the previous songs, but it was still very nice to listen to. I didn't expect Big Brother Little Xian to be proficient in music as well. Coincidentally, at this moment, Han Yushi brought over 3 cups of steaming hot tea and greeted with a smile, Come. The weather is dry. Your Highnesses, have a cup of tea and moisten your throats. Husband, drink some water, Xian's Cecily Changxian, and Changle hurriedly got up to thank her. Changle walked over and held Han Yushi's hand affectionately. How many times have I told you? Sister Yushi, you could just call me Changle. Why are you still so polite? The corner of Li Chengxian's mouth twitched when he saw this. He didn't know why his younger sister, who had always been quiet and gentle, behaved so familiarly here as though she was in her own home. Perhaps this was the uniqueness of Li Zishuan's home. Everyone here was very happy, and the atmosphere was always very warm. Blame me. Changle, drink your tea. Han Yushi didn't dwell on this small issue. She laughed and said, What were you talking about earlier? When I came in, I saw you chatting so happily. Oh, we were talking about the song Dedication of Love that was widely sung in Chang'an City a while ago. Brother Xiao Xian is so awesome. He's good at studying, good at martial arts, and even knows how to compose songs. Sister Yushi, you're so lucky. Changle held the teacup and said with sparkling eyes. Han Yushi looked at Li Zishuan with jealousy. She also admitted that Dedication of Love was indeed nice, but the person Li Zishuan taught was not her, but the top courtesan of 100 Flowers Tower, Fong Fian. Although she didn't say it out loud, she couldn't help but feel a little sour in her heart. Stop praising me, Changle. If you continue, Brother Xiao Xian will go to heaven. The corners of Han Yushi's mouth held a smile as she spoke. Changle smiled and said, It's not as serious as you say, Sister Yushi. By the way, Brother Xiao Xian, it's going to be the New Year soon. Do you have any new songs recently? It'll be lively then. New Year's song? Li Zishuan was stunned. Anti-songs, good luck. I wish you good luck. Echoed in his mind. He hurriedly shook his head. Wasn't a little too out of place to create this song in ancient times? No. I don't have any free time these days. How would I have time to think about this? Oh, Changle replied with a slightly disappointed oh. Li Chengxian then asked, Xiao Xian, speaking of a new year, Curious Pavilion Workshop has made a lot of money this year. And I didn't expect that there would be so many big deals as the new year is approaching. This is a good sign. Curious Pavilion will definitely be more glorious in the coming year. Li Chengxian had shares in Curious Pavilion, as well as Changle. So when he saw that Curious Pavilion had made a lot of money in the past year, Li Chengxian was so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. So many big deals recently? What kind of deals? Why didn't I know? Li Zixuan listened to the end, but he was puzzled. Husband, it's like this. Han Yushi hurriedly took over and said, 2 days ago, Faubert came to our house to look for you, but you weren't there at the time. I asked Faubert what happened, and Faubert said that he didn't know why the news of the heaters suddenly spread. Many people went to the workshop and asked Faubert to customize a set of heaters for their house. The price was negotiable. Many of them represented the officials of the imperial court. Faubert didn't want to offend them, so he came to ask for your opinion. Then, wife, did you agree? Li Zixuan asked. Han Yushi nodded and said, if you don't agree, it's a small matter if you don't make money, but it's a big matter if you offend people. Since our house is open to doing business, there's no need to offend people because of such a small matter. Yes, wife, you're right. But in this way, can the workshop's coal furnace and honeycomb coal production keep up? He didn't intend to introduce the heaters to the market so quickly at first, because it needed to be customized for every household. It was very troublesome and time-consuming. However, since so many people came to buy it with a small amount of money, he didn't need to reject them. I've also asked Faubert about this, and he said that it can keep up. Han Yushi replied, Xiao Xian, you should be content. The workshop can now make nearly 1,000 strings of cash by customizing a set of heaters for every household. Where else can you find such a good business? But you have to thank my father. If he didn't get people to install heaters in Taiji Palace, the civil and military officials wouldn't know about the benefits of heaters. Li Chengxian laughed loudly. Li Zixuan was secretly speechless. A customized set of heaters could make nearly 1,000 strings of cash. There were so many rich people in Chang'an City. Chapter 11:15. Oh, husband, the Warm Tang Foundation is almost done with work. There are close to 60,000 poor people around Chang'an City. Almost all of them have received coal stoves, honeycomb briquettes, food, and clothing from the foundation. Now, there are only some finishing touches left. As for Dr. Sun, he has already held free medical services in 7 counties. I estimate that he will only be able to visit all 20 counties after the new year. At the mention of the workshop, Han Yushi thought of the Nuan Tang Foundation and asked softly, 60,000 households? They've finished delivering so quickly? Li Zixuan was surprised. It's all thanks to the assistance of the people sent by the Crown Prince. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so fast. Han Yushi pursed her lips and smiled. Li Chengxian said, half-jokingly, This winter, Xiao Xian, you've not only brought warmth to the poor, but also to the rich. Li Zixuan couldn't help but smile. He thought for a moment and said, then let's reward the students tonight. Let's have a hot pot together. It'll be lively. 600 people eating hot pot together? That's a good idea. I'll be there too. After hearing Li Zixuan's suggestion, Li Chengxian's eyes lit up. Changle's eyes also sparkled. She was eager to give it a try. Chengxian, don't even think about it. The students are eating hot pot at the academy tonight. How are you going to come back if you go? Li Zixuan said mercilessly. The brother and sister pair immediately wilted. Han Yushi smiled. Then she seemed to have thought of something and suddenly said, Husband, His Majesty said that he wants you to reflect on yourself at home for 2 months. You can't go tonight, right? Silence. But then Li Chengxian laughed loudly. That's good too. None of us can go. This guy was clearly taking pleasure in his misfortune. Li Zixuan rolled his eyes and said with a smile, His Majesty said that I'm grounded at home for 2 months, but I was still at the Supreme Court this morning. So strictly speaking, these 2 months should start from tomorrow. I can still go out tonight. Poochie, Changle giggled. Her delicate little face was like a blooming white orchid, fresh and refined. She was really charming when she looked back and smiled. She had the potential to be the most beautiful woman in the world at such a young age. She covered her mouth and said happily, Big brother Xiao Xian, you're really cunning. If Imperial Father finds out, he'll definitely be furious. Imperial Father is so angry. Why are you still so happy? Of course, this was only what Li Chengxian thought in his heart, and he wouldn't voice it out at a time like this. At this moment, he first glanced at Changle and then looked at Li Zixuan. Little Xian, you're clearly twisting words and forcing logic. If my imperial father knew about this, he would definitely come looking for trouble with you. I think you'd better not go. It's just hot pot. Han Yushi nodded, indicating that she agreed with Li Chengxian's words. Since ancient times, the words of the emperor had always been of great weight. There was basically no official like Li Zixuan who didn't take the emperor's words seriously and always wanted to take advantage of loopholes. Han Yushi felt that if this went on, it wouldn't be good if Li Zixuan came to settle accounts at an opportune time. Li Zixuan glanced at Li Chengxian in annoyance. Suddenly, his eyes lit up and he said, "Hey, His Majesty only ordered me to be grounded at home to reflect, but he didn't specify which home. I'll stay in Yinshan to reflect these 2 months. This way, it won't be considered disobeying His Majesty's imperial edict." He was so insistent on going to Yinshan to make hot pot for the students. First, it was to reward them. Recently, these students had been running around for Operation Warm Winter. Second, a few days ago, the people had caused a ruckus in the Chui family. If it weren't for the students maintaining order on the spot, many dirty things would have happened. At that time, not only would he be impeached by the officials, but he would also feel guilty in his heart. He had to thank this group of students. As soon as these words came out, Changle was stunned. There was such a quick-witted person in this world. Li Chengxian was stunned. How could there be such a shameless person in this world? The more Li Zixuan thought about it, the more pleased he became. He said, "Haha, it's settled then. Wife, quickly have the servants in the residence prepare the ingredients. Tonight, the academy will have a hot pot feast for more than 600 people. Have Wang Zhong take out all the frozen mutton in the freezer. I'll cut the mutton." Han Yushi was stunned. Then she nodded and said, "Okay. Husband, please wait a moment. I'll go arrange it right away." Although the mutton in the freezer at home was reserved for the new year in a few days, Han Yushi saw that Li Zixuan was in high spirits and didn't want to dampen his spirits. At worst, she could just buy some more in a few days. "Chengqian, Changle, have you eaten hot pot in the palace before?" Yes, we've eaten." The siblings nodded fiercely. Not only had they eaten it before, they had eaten quite a bit. Then who cut the mutton in the palace? Li Zixuan was suddenly curious and asked. Li Chengxian looked a little embarrassed. He looked around and said, "I heard Imperial Father say that Steward Zhao and the old consecrators in the palace took turns cutting it." The corner of Li Zixuan's mouth twitched. He didn't think that his initial worry would become a reality. Oldie was really deranged. For the sake of good food, he didn't even care about his face. "Okay, then I'll have to cut the mutton next. I don't have time to accompany you. You two can do as you please. Anyway, you two seem to be more familiar with this residence than I am." Li Zixuan waved his hand speechlessly. Then he turned and left to cut the mutton. Li Chengxian and Changle looked at each other, then followed Li Zixuan out the door. In the kitchen of the Li residence, the two of them witnessed the peerless swordsmanship of a grandmaster expert. Only then did they understand why the mutton they ate in the past had to be cut by Zhao Song or the imperial consecrators personally. It was because ordinary people couldn't possibly have such amazing and dazzling swordsmanship. After admiring Li Zixuan's peerless swordsmanship for a while, Li Chengxian saw that it was getting late. He quickly pulled Changle back to the palace. Everyone in the Li residence was busy. Madame Li and Li Jingma didn't have any objections to Li Zixuan treating the students to hot pot. In their opinion, their son had just been released from prison and should be celebrated. However, they were a little dissatisfied that Li Zixuan was going to Yinshan to do closed-door cultivation. It was almost the new year, and Li Zixuan was obviously going to Yinshan for the new year. However, the old couple still couldn't bear to leave their home in Chang'an City. However, these were all trivial matters. With Madame Li's love for her son, she was naturally obedient. As for Li Jingma, what choice did he have? At 5 in the afternoon, Li Zixuan and his family, along with dozens of servants, set off for Yinshan. Li Zixuan planned to give up 2 villas in Yinshan for his parents, as well as the Yi family's Yi Guichon and old Madame Yi to temporarily live in. This way, the family wouldn't feel crowded even if they spent the new year in Yinshan. As for Li Zixuan, he went to the Warm Tang Foundation and personally waited for the students who had gone to the nearby counties to send warmth back. Chapter 11:16. Master, Yamacho, you're here? When Li Zixuan arrived at the Warm Tang Foundation, there were a few people lining up outside to donate money. In the courtyard, Iron Egg and Meng Wenhao led the 3rd Brigade to help with the donation collection. Seeing Li Zixuan, who had disappeared for many days, suddenly appear, Iron Egg and Meng Wenhao put down their work and came over to greet him with a surprised expression. How are you? Have you been busy recently? Li Zixuan asked with a smile. Meng Wenhao looked at Li Zixuan from head to toe and asked instead of answering. Yamacho, I haven't seen you recently. Are you all right? Iron Egg also looked over with a worried expression. Although he didn't know the inside story, he had vaguely sensed that something was wrong in the past 2 days. What could have happened to me? I've just been busy with writing books recently. Don't worry about it. Li Zixuan waved his hand and said lightly. Yamacho, you've really been writing books recently? What do you mean by really? Are you saying that it's fake? No. I thought Sun Zifan was lying to us. After all, that guy doesn't speak the truth. Meng Wenhao scratched his head suspiciously, then replied, We haven't been that busy recently because there aren't as many people coming to donate money as before. Maybe it's because it's almost the new year. The people are busy stocking up on New Year goods now. After the initial madness of the donation storm caused by the Warm Tang Foundation, people had gradually returned to rationality. Now, people had started to treat the foundation as a place of spiritual sustenance, such as a temple or a Taoist temple. If they wanted to do good, they would come here to donate money. Not only could they accumulate merit, but they could also seek peace of mind. Are there fewer people donating money? Li Zixuan muttered thoughtfully in a low voice. After a while, he asked again, Are there statistics of the foundation's donation consumption these days? It's done. Meng Wenhao nodded. He ran into the room and took out an account book. After turning to one of the pages, he said, The Academy's Operation Warm Winter has consumed a total of 43,512 strings of cash so far. As for Dr. Sun, because he needs to consume a lot of herbs every day, he has consumed a total of 5,074 strings of cash. So the total is 93,586 strings of cash. These accounts have already been calculated by all the members of the 3rd Brigade. More than 90,000 strings of cash. Thank goodness. Even if Sun Simiao were to provide free medical services in all the counties around Chang'an City, the total cost would only be around 200,000 strings of cash. The foundation can still afford it. Li Zixuan thought for a while and sighed. When will the rest return? Li Zixuan asked again. Iron Egg glanced at the door. Should be soon. Coincidentally, at this moment, the sound of footsteps came from outside the door. There are also some youths talking and laughing. We're really lucky today to have met such a big rabbit. TSK, let's sneak to the west of the academy and roast the rabbit tonight. Hee, that's a good idea. The roast chicken from last time really makes me miss it. TSK. These 2 rabbit legs are mine. I was the one who injured the rabbit. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to catch up with Chu Mo. Bullsh *T. Even if you weren't there, I could still catch up with him. Needless to say, these were the bastards who had sneaked out of the academy to steal chickens during the military training. Li Zixuan's old face darkened. He secretly thought that this bunch of brats really didn't learn their lesson. They wanted to sneak out of the academy at night to barbecue again. Most importantly, these bastards didn't even call him along when they went out to barbecue. He couldn't tolerate this. In order to show his presence, Li Zixuan put his hands behind his back and coughed a few times with a serious face. Gosh, Xiao, Yamacho is here too. Cheng Chimo felt that the cough was somewhat familiar and looked towards the source of the sound. When he saw Li Zixuan standing in the middle of the courtyard, he was stunned. Yamacho, are you okay? Are you done with your work? Sun Ziffin was just about to say, "Are you okay?" when he suddenly realized and quickly changed his words. "Huh, I just heard some people say that they wanted to sneak out to roast rabbits at night. Is that true?" Lisa Schwan said lightly. "No, absolutely not." Chung Chumo quickly hid the rabbit behind him and shook his head. "Umph, give it to me." Lisa Schwan glanced at him and said unhappily, "No, Yamacho, we spent a lot of effort to catch it." Chung Chumo insisted. Lisa Schwan said with a faint smile, "You really don't want to give it to me? Then you won't have a share of the hot pot tonight." "Hot pot? Yamacho, you want to treat us to hot pot?" Li Tai's eyes lit up. He was the first batch of people to try hot pot. When he heard that he could eat the hot pot personally made by Lisa Schwan, he immediately became excited. Although there was hot pot in the palace, he always felt that Lisa Schwan's hot pot was better. Lisa Schwan nodded. He hadn't eaten wild game in a long time. He thought that would be good to eat roasted rabbits tonight. Li Tai quickly pushed Ching Chumo and said, "Chonyo, quick, give the rabbit to Yamacho. That hot pot is much better than rabbit meat. Quick, quick, quick." At the end of his sentence, he couldn't wait anymore. He directly snatched the rabbit that Chung Chumo hid behind his back and handed it to Lisa Schwan. "Chinke, what's hot pot?" Sun Ziffin was puzzled. His father was a civil official and didn't usually hang out with Qin Xiong and the other generals, so he didn't know what hot pot was. Hee, you'll know in a while." While they were talking, the academy students who went out had already returned. When they saw Lisa Schwan, the academy students were very surprised and came over to greet him. Lisa Schwan let Li Tai do a head count. When he knew that everyone had arrived, he gathered the students together and announced a piece of news that made everyone happy. Of course, Chung Chumo was an exception. "This month, students, you've all worked hard for the Warm Tang Foundation. In order to reward everyone for their hard work, the Academy is holding a special banquet tonight and treating everyone to a new dish that you've never eaten before. Now, everyone, pack up and follow me out of the city, to the Academy." Oh, as soon as he finished speaking, there was a thunderous cheer. Who didn't know that Lisa Schwan was very particular about food? Since Lisa Schwan valued this new dish so much, they would definitely have a good meal tonight. Most importantly, their recent efforts were recognized by Lisa Schwan. This was more important than anything else. In the noisy cheers, Chung Chumo spat out a mouthful of blood. F***CK. This is too much. Too much. A rabbit was actually tricked by the mountain leader. What loss? Lisa Schwan didn't hear Chung Chumo's complaints. When the cheers died down, he led the students out of the city. Yinshan Zhang should be almost ready by now. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.